Philip? Ah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
About a minute. to start the show.
I didn't catch it.
You're all set. You're good. Everybody good to go? Yep. All right. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock. We're gonna start this meeting, just kidding. So I call to order this meeting of the Board of Trustees for the town of Buena Vista, this 10th day of January, 2023. I'd like to welcome everybody that's here tonight. Full house, it's awesome. Thanks for coming in. If you do want to make a public comment, make sure you sign in on the little board at the desk up front. Just put your name on there. And then we'll call you up in a little bit. Then up next, all right, Paula, would you do the roll call, please?
Mayor Fay. Trustee Cobb.
Here.
Trustee Hilton Hinga.
Here.
Trustee Jenkins.
Here.
Trustee Lucrezi.
Here.
Trustee Rowe.
Here.
And Trustee Swisher. Here.
All right, and then let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand if you can. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Sit. All right, some exciting stuff. Up next, we actually have a proclamation. So I'm going to do my best to read this and not butcher it. So I get nervous and sometimes that happens. All right. The proclamation, Youth Appreciation Week. Whereas the vast majority of youth are concerned, knowledgeable, and responsible citizens. And whereas the accomplishments and achievements of these young citizens deserve recognition and praise from their elders. And whereas Optimus International has since 1956 developed and promoted a program entitled Youth Appreciation Week. And whereas the citizens of the town of Buena Vista, Colorado have indicated a desire to join the Optimists, i.e. the Buena Vista Optimist Club, in expressing appreciation and approval of the contributions of the youth. Now, therefore, I, Gina Lucrezi, Mayor Pro Tem of the town of Buena Vista, do hereby proclaim the week of January 30th through February 3rd, 2023 as Youth Appreciation Week in the town of Buena Vista. By this action, let it be known that we have faith in the ability of today's youth as they assume responsible roles in the future of humankind. Given under my hand and the seal of the town of Buena Vista on this 10th day of January 2023. All right. Up next, we have our agenda adoption. Anybody have any thoughts, questions? Would entertain a motion?
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Swisher Cobb, I'm sorry. Gosh, totally butchered that. Cobb, Ellen Hinga. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, up next, we have the consent agenda. Does anybody, any thoughts, questions?
On the screen, the appointments.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, if nobody else has anything with the consent agenda, I do want to recognize that we have two appointments for advisory boards. Our Historic Preservation Advisory Board, which is resolution number 2. I would like to thank for for all their service and everything they've given to the community and taking the time. They're reappointing Susie Kelly, Melanie Roth. And then also we have Mary Therese Ansley, Joe Reese, Daniel Portwright, and Vic Cookland as well that are being reappointed. Thank you guys very much for everything you do and all the hard work. And then also we have the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is resolution number 3, and appointing those members to the board. And we have Blake Bennett and Thomas Dumas. So we want to thank them for their time and all the support they've given the community and everything you all are doing. So thank you very much. If there's nothing else with the consent agenda, I would look for a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, so Swisher Row, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Oh, thank you very much. All right, now we're headed to the public comment section of the night. I'll read these names, and I just want to remind you, when you come to the podium, please provide your name and your address. And we try to keep this to 3 minutes, just because we have full agenda. And so we have Daryl Atherton.
Where do I go?
Oh, podium, please, if you.
No. We each signed up for 3 minutes, so. no,
We're here for 20 minutes.
There we go.
Thank you for letting us address the board today. We are all veterans. My wife also over there is veteran, and we represent both the American Legion and the VFW in town here. I'm the commander of the American Legion. This is my senior vice commander, Jeremy Alday, and the quartermaster for the VFW, Don DeLorem, and Heather Rupska for the chamber. And you've probably all heard of the Veterans Memorial located at the Visitor Center in Poncha Springs. This was erected to honor all veterans of Chaffee County and members of the Legion VFW Post Marine Corps League in the county. There are 2 projects going on with that memorial. First, veterans of the county can purchase a brick to be placed around the memorial. There's about 85 there right now, and there's a lot more coming in soon. Second is the reason that we are here to talk to you tonight, and it's about having a tank put on static display at the memorial. Mr. Brian Berger, Poncha Springs Town Administrator and Treasurer, has been in contact with the U.S. Army TechCom about obtaining a tank for this purpose. The decision on the tank model and cost was determined. It's an M41 tank, in case anybody wants to see it. I do have a picture, and I can pass around if you want. Let's see, where was I? And the cost for the tank is $21,372.49. Don't ask why they couldn't round it off. Veterans organizations of the towns, Poncha Springs, Salida, and here in Buena Vista, are going to the town board meetings and asking if they would consider donating 1/4 of the total amount, which would be $5,343.12 per entity. If all 3 towns and then we're also going to go to the county commissioners and see if we can get them on board with donating also. So that'd be four entities donating to the cost of the tank. So if we get an okay from the towns, then we will go to the commissioners, like I said, and talk to them. We think this would make the memorial stand out even more and be good for the county to let people know we respect and honor all our veterans. This would catch the eye of those that go by there. They may stop, especially if they are veterans or have kids that want to see the tank close up. And they could also see the bricks of all the veterans that have purchased bricks for, and family members that have purchased bricks to honor Chaffee County veterans that are no longer with us. We have been told the decision needs to be made as soon as possible, as we are first on the list for this tank right now. Thank you for letting us offer our proposal tonight. If you have any questions, we will answer them if we can, or find out the answer and get back to you as soon as we can. You are welcome to take the vote right now and give us the good news, or we can wait for others. Again, thank you. Any questions or, yeah, if you want.
What's your address, just for our records?
Pardon me, oh,
We just need an address for the records.
my address
Yeah,
is
that would be fine.
2531 Ranch Road. And it's Hartselle, Colorado, 80449.
Thank you very much for that,
Uh-huh.
for your service and everything else. It sounds like a pretty neat proposal, and we can discuss this for sure later on at staff trustee interaction, which is towards the end of the night, but
Okay.
I appreciate that.
I wanted to be 52, but the tank was a lot cheaper.
Did you guys have anything to say if we got another minute or two?
Again, thank you for this time, for letting Daryl go ahead and speak on behalf of the service organizations that we have here in the county. It's just you know, honor to have served and to be able to be recognized. And with that memorial that's down there, although it's down in Poncha Springs, it's a representation of the entire county, you know, Buena Vista, Salida, Poncha Springs area. So, but again, thank you for having given us this time to go ahead and speak regarding this matter.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, up next, I have Paula Andrews.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Paul Andrews. I live at 27999 County Road 301 here in BV, and I'm the principal development partner for The Crossing. I'm glad to be in here in person this month. It was not ideal to introduce a complex public-private partnership and new grant program over Zoom last month, particularly in 3 minutes. I'd like to remind the trustees of the significant changes we've made to The Crossing since the sketch plan presentation in September. Working creatively with Joseph and the town staff and with Reed McCulloch from the Chaffee Housing Trust and Becky Gray from the Housing Authority, we developed a plan that transforms the first phase of The Crossing to address a significant portion of the housing crisis we're facing here in BV and the Arkansas Valley. Specifically, our plan provides 36 rental apartments that will be permanently managed by the Housing Authority at 70 to 90% of projected AMI. In addition, we're planning to dedicate at least 30 units in the first phase to the Housing Trust. These will be permanently deed-restricted homes that Reed and his clients will be able to purchase at what we currently project to be 65 to 95% of average median income. Achieving these objectives requires a successful application under the Transformational Affordable Housing Grant Program to pay for $5 million of our public infrastructure costs. We received continued favorable feedback from the Department of Housing and others that this collaborative project meets all of the objectives of the grant program and will be a very strong applicant. Remember that this infrastructure cost is one of the major reasons why this site hasn't been developed since it was originally platted 130 years ago. If we're unable to apply for a grant or not successful in receiving the requested funds, we will still try and provide some affordable housing. However, we'd have to rework the economics of the apartments, and the number of units that could easily be transferred to the trust and its clients would be significantly reduced, and the end prices they would have to pay would be increased. Plus, the project could be delayed in today's economic environment. I think you're aware that we've been advised that the town is the best applicant for this grant, as the public infrastructure that would be funded will ultimately be owned and maintained by the town. We also heard your concerns around the workload this may put on town staff, the possible impact on the Carbon Street grant, and the precedent it may set for other projects. We've been able to discuss these concerns with Lisa and Joseph and also Andrew Etchley at the Department of Housing over the last month. And my hope is that you'll include Reed and myself in the conversation related to this issue later this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Up next, we have Reed. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Reed McCullough, 17559 County Road 368 here in Buena Vista. I want to speak to you about this transformational affordable housing grant, because this is an incredible opportunity of a lifetime. The fact that these funds have become available from the state and from the federal government to address this housing crisis and put a huge dent in it with these available funds is something that we can't afford to not take advantage of. According to the housing needs assessment, we need about 330 units over the next 5 years in Buena Vista. And if you combine the Carbon Street project and the crossing, we'll get somewhere in the neighborhood of 155 units. And a lot of those units are going to hit at AMIs that are really remarkable. We've got a project in Leadville right now, and we're working hard to hit 100% AMI. As Paul just noted, this project for the ownership pieces units will get units that range from 65 up to 95% AMI. And that's a spread, so we'll be able to distribute them across that, that section of the spectrum. So a really critical opportunity also for the Chaffee Housing Trust, because with us building 6, 8, 12 units at a time, this project could scale our operations to almost quadruple in one fell swoop the number of housing homes that we can provide for home ownership. So really want to emphasize to you all that right now at this very moment is this opportunity, and it's going to be fleeting. Those funds are being sought after. I'm speaking to a lot of entities across the state who are applying, and so the funds will run out as soon as they're doled out to all of the applicants who step up early. So ask yourselves, what is the risk of submitting a letter of interest on behalf of these two projects simultaneously? It's the letter of interest. You could turn around and say, never mind, we don't want to go through with it tomorrow, but at least it opens the door for a conversation with the Division of Housing that then leads to an application. And even the application could be rescinded if for some reason that you decided this wasn't the right time. But to not submit these immediately would be failing to seize this opportunity. And so I hope you take careful consideration of the project, and I'm going to stick around and be happy to discuss it further later on. Thank you.
Thank you. How about online? Do you have any?
I'm not seeing any hands that are raised from our attendees. Reminder, if you want to speak and you're attending, and for those that are speaking on a business item, I'll promote you as panelists at that time. But if you need to talk to any public comment right now, just raise your hand.
Not seeing any. All right. Okay, well, we will move on to staff reports. Up first, Lisa, Town Administrator.
Well, it's nice to be back in 2023. And we got a Christmas present from DOLA, the town did, which was a grant for the water expansion treatment plant, water treatment plant expansion project. And so kudos to Sean Williams and Phil Puckett for putting that together, and we got their announcement on the 22nd, right before Christmas. So that was really fitting and nice, and that'll go towards the treatment processes that need to be met to live up to regulations, the betterment of the community. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was the CML effective governance training that we attended, and I know there were a couple of trustees and the mayor. I know Gina and Sue also attended that, and I found that to be a very good refresher. There were some really good items on media and some things to say, some things maybe not to say, just little pointers that are really great for us to refresh on, I think, when we're in the public eye. And then also, I thought it was interesting that they had one on the Roberts rules and how it's important to kind of have a pattern or a rules or procedures that you follow. And I was thinking, you know, we do have rules, but they're not Roberts rules. Might be at some point in time, we might want to think about, you know, just kind of refreshing, looking at Roberts rules and picking and choosing, kind of like they suggested in that training. Or, you know, if you feel that we've got a good pattern going, then that's fine too. But I found that a very valuable training. And then lastly, but not least, I've finished all of the annual reviews. And so that piece is put to rest now. So, and just that's it for me. I think we have some more reports from staff. So Police Chief, I think, is up next.
Got it. Yes, thank you very much. And yes, that was a very nice Christmas gift. So
Yes.
kudos to you guys for making that happen. That's usually helpful. Yes, Chief Morgan, here, oh, there you are.
Hey, trustees, thank you. Happy New Year, everybody. Also, thank you to the veterans in the audience there. Really appreciate your service. My staff reports in the packet. Not much to report. I'll just go over a couple highlights. You can see the pictures there from our Shop with the Cop that we did with Salida PD and Chaffee County Sheriff's Office in December. Really great program, really successful this year. I think the whole town's experiencing, there's been a lot of sickness going around. It hit our department pretty hard. So we're very creative with the schedule, trying to get things covered. And unfortunately, sometimes the criminal element doesn't take a break. So our officers, a lot of them came in while they were sick to help keep things covered. I have in there, it's kind of a typo, our new cadet. This was actually a cut and paste from my staff report last week, but this week, actually today, he started the police academy. So we're really excited about that. His name's Blake. And if everything goes well, he should graduate in May. Hiring and retention has been a real challenge for police agencies across the state. And it's definitely been difficult for us. So once he's out on the road and joins the ranks, we're real excited about that. That'll help us a lot. Let's see, there's a fentanyl and synthetic opioid poisoning grant, investigations grant. Trustee Cobb sent me a link to it, and I got some other links about it from the state. So I did apply for that grant for a crime scene trailer, kind of lobbed a Hail Mary out there. We'll see if they bite on that or not, but it's definitely a resource we could use. And fentanyl is in our community. It is very dangerous. The DEA has a campaign related to it called One Pill Can Kill. One of my reasonings behind a crime scene trailer is we could store a lot of protective equipment and things in there if officers encounter, especially a large amount of it, to help keep us safe if we have to process something like that. And yeah, that's about it. My stats are attached. I got those from dispatch. As I mentioned in the past, they've switched to a new system, and there's been a couple wrinkles with how it appears, but I think this format hopefully is pretty good, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Chief Morgan,
Yes.
you said that we're having problems retaining staff. Are we retaining the staff that we're sending through the police academy?
Yes, so far we have. There's one that went through the academy and didn't make it past the field training phase.
Okay.
And then there's two that we put through the academy that are still on the road. They're still working for us, doing a great job. And then you might remember a couple months ago, we swore in Officer Flores. And because she'd been an officer in Texas, we were able to pay for a mini academy for her to get her certified through Colorado. And she's doing a great job for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? I actually have one quick random question just on the call type analysis, which this is a great, let's say spreadsheet, but printout of, so we can see everything. My only question is on the top line with the call type, then it has like 000102. Are those supposed to be, is that the dates or what does that signify? Just there's that top.
Yeah, so I do believe that is the date. So at the top there, it says 12/1 through 12/31. So I think, Lisa, if you're in control of this there, I think you scroll down, it might go through the 31st on the next page.
Does it?
It doesn't seem to, so I'll ask our dispatcher. That's a good question. It would, I don't think that is the dates because it starts with a 00.
I wasn't sure, and it's not a more curiosity, because then I'm like, oh, each day, you know, just how many per day or something. That's what I was thinking, but if it doesn't signify dates, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think it does. I'll check with our dispatcher who sends me these and get clarification on those numbers.
Well, thank you, and thanks again for everything. The shop with the cop looked like it was a great time. Thanks for bringing those photos in too, so we get a chance to see.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
Okay, up next, Public Works Director Sean.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be pretty quick. Little different kind of report for me. This is just all water, so kind of some, I was gonna kind of joke and call this kind of a spaghetti western style thing, but there's just kind of some good and a little bit of bad with the trend that we're having, really no ugly. I mean, we do have some things and some developments, some areas that we serve water to that, you know, have to do some work, and we're pretty diligent with that. But if you look at that first graph, and it kind of shows the last 4 years. So I think the big thing is you look at the water that we produced in 2019, 211 million, 2020, 216 million, 2021 was at 195, and then this year 176. And you can see that the demand numbers are pretty close to the same all the way around, even the last 2 years with us having a lot of moisture, a lot of rainy days, which helps limit our outside use. But yeah, a credit to the team and everyone involved that's helped us kind of get that uncounted water, down to a more manageable and more acceptable range. I think we still have a little bit of work to do. I was actually surprised to see that, that annually we were at 13%, but it's a significant improvement from the data that we provided you with the Red Water Water Resource Master Plan, where we're right above 20, right? Where we're at 22, 23. So we know that we found a pretty significant leak about a year and a half ago, June 2021. And it was nice to see that we were trending in that direction. Doing the water reports monthly, we kind of had a pretty good strong feeling that we were going to see this. So put all that data together, and this is kind of where we're at. So good job with the water team. And yeah, we still see them from time to time. We got called out by dispatch, met with Buena and Chaffee Sheriff's Department deputies, and we had a leak on Main Street, this week, and we're looking to see if that was actually a metered leak, but it was a service line leak coming from a building flooding the highway. So kind of one of those things that it's probably been happening for a while. But anyways, got some pretty good numbers in here for you all to look at, and distribution, water line connections and meter connections. Those numbers are down from the I don't know, it was 2018, 2019, 2020, when we're seeing 70 to 80 connections a year. So slowed down just a little bit. Anyways, good job also with the team for the cross connection compliance. We're 99% complete. That's fantastic. And we got all our sampling done for the year. And yeah, so a few developments that are happening right now, but yeah, for the most part, yeah, doing pretty good. Some fantastic milestones. Won't take too long, but I mean, the DOLA grant trip with Lisa was fantastic. We got there plenty early. We took some time to kind of gather our wits, and we walked in about 20 minutes early, and they said, "You're on." And so we walked right in and we presented, and just, yeah, it's fantastic. Appreciate the Department of Local Affairs giving us that opportunity, and really appreciate that they awarded us the grant. So thank you.
Ew. Questions, thoughts for Sean?
I gotta say.
I know.
I gotta say, I'd be like, what are we doing? What is Their loss unaccounted for is significant.
Yeah, you know, it's pretty bad because when you, I mean, collectively, when we look at, you know, our, you know, numbers of, you know, 24 million gallons a year that we lost, you know, about 4 million of that comes from Ivy League. They have, you know, what, maybe 50, maybe not quite 50 active taps. And so when you look at that, you know, number based on the, you know, the connections that they have and the amount of water that they use, and you see that number, it's very significant on that ratio. I mean, that would be completely unacceptable for our community to be, you know, to do that. I think that what we are trying to do is get this, you know, moved up into a manageable, realistic action item. You know, the hard part right now has just been trying to get back on it when we're, you know, obviously working on the water plant project. We have operational things, we have state reporting, we have regulatory compliance. And we're trying to engineer well 3 for, you know, for 2023, summer of 2023, just in case we want to use that for peaking plants and things like that. I've talked with Joe about it, and, you know, it is a high level item. You know, we're kind of getting into that end of the year where we are kind of putting our projects on the board and figuring out how we can manage them. I think we're getting one thing too, and pretty optimistic about a few things that are happening in public works. You know, we're staffing. We stepped a fantastic administrative assistant just this last week. We're looking at staffing an engineering position. I think those things will help us kind of create some more bandwidth. But yeah, I apologize that we haven't done anything yet, but it's definitely something that we're, you know, really trying to get going this first quarter.
Thank you.
I'm whining, huh? Yeah.
I see the upper tank paintings on there, like, woo.
I don't know what happened to that. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Yep.
And then up last, we have Town Treasurer Philip. Saw him online. so-
Hey, everybody. Happy
Hey.
New Year. Well, I will try to be brief with this because next meeting you're gonna get probably more of me than you want. We've got a few things to take care of next meeting, but a lot happens in a month, and we have some situations that have popped up since middle of December, which is driving an opportunity, I'll call it, for us to look at amending the 2023 budget already, right? We just got done printing that thing and we're ready to change it. But we, unfortunately, Becky Schmitz, who's been our part-time finance clerk for the past 6 months, she's done an outstanding job, but she's having to move out of state to be closer to family, take care of some family health issues. So we are unfortunately losing her, and she had taken over our accounts payable process, providing much needed relief for Jonna to do more HR related function, which for growing organizations pretty critical. So her last day is tomorrow, so we are adjusting quickly here. The opportunity that's presenting itself comes from our discussion we had last meeting where we had some more grant opportunities come up for consideration by the board and for staff. And we had a really good discussion about the not only writing the grant, but what it takes to manage the grant afterwards. A lot of these are complex, especially federal dollars, where we have to keep track of all of our reimbursements and do those things timely. And we want to do that well so that we can continue to get grant funding. We have at least 12 active grants, plus a couple of low interest loans. And so things are pretty active on that end, and I don't see that slowing down, right? I think you all will be talking and considering more grants coming up. So what the idea is here is to actually go forward with a full-time finance clerk that would be more, have a little bit more seniority, a little more skill level and responsibilities to handle accounts payable, but then also dive into grant administration for us. So tonight, all I'm looking for is really a head nod and a direction from the board. If you feel like this is a good idea, I'll come back next meeting, and in my reports, I will provide the specifics on budget impact for the board to consider making a motion and approve a motion for a budget amendment. This happens during the year for those trustees that are new to this. You all will approve budget amendments during the first half of the year, and about mid-year, we'll catch up and do an adjustment. And then we'll do a final adjustment at the end of the year. So not out of sequence, but pretty quick here already, something happening. At the same time, I don't want to come asking to spend more money if I can't bring money. And I'm pleased to report that we've been working with our bank, Collegiate Peaks Bank, who that's where we have a lot of our operating funds at. And we have increased our interest rate up to 2.5% this year. In addition to that, we're also on a credit card rewards program where we get a 1% back. So what that means is we are substantially under budgeted for interest revenue next year that will more than cover this full-time position, or this change from a part-time to a full-time position. We also under budgeted on our mill levy revenue with that final change at the end of the budget cycle. So we can kind of catch up and update our budget for that. So we will have more revenue than expense when I bring this back to you next meeting. But I guess for tonight, I'd like to hear from the board. Are you okay with this approach? I know grants are important to the town, and we want to do that well. This doesn't take care of everything we want to do with grants, but it's a pretty important piece. So with that, I'll take any questions, or if you all want to have a little discussion on that, I'll take your direction.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Mark?
Yeah, thumbs up on my end. We're always talking about supporting staff, and I think this is a great way to do it. So I approve moving forward with this.
Steph and Cindy?
Yeah, for sure.
Cindy, your thoughts?
Needed.
Cool. I'm in favor as well. So I think you have your head nod.
Great. Thank you all. I will see you all for a few agenda items next meeting.
And just also sorry to hear about, Becky, that we'll lose her, but obviously wish her all the best with where she's headed and with her family. So nothing more for Philip. We can move on to business items. Okay, so first thing, we have item A, Boys and Girls Club of Chaffee County ground lease. And Joseph, where's yours?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, trustees, members of the public here. And welcome also Brian and Dustin from the Boys and Girls Club. I'm sure they will get up in a moment and say a few words. I'll give a very brief overview of the actual decision before you tonight, and then I'll turn it over to Boys and Girls Club to flesh out a little bit more about the facility vision itself. But as you all are aware, for the past really almost year and a half, there's been a recognition that the block 25, which is this block right here, the vacant land to our west, was prone or perfect for a multi-use community facility. And the master plan or vision put forward by CU Denver students back in May of 2021 showed a multi-use community facility that would serve multiple generations and multiple uses. Very quickly after that master plan was created, it became clear there was an opportunity to partner with the Boys and Girls Club. Instead of town taking on a town-owned facility, making land available, Boys and Girls Club making their vision come to fruition with the facility and partnering in the use of that facility. And so ever since then, we've been on the track of what are the steps needed on both sides, right? Organizational and town to make this a reality. So as you all recall, you saw a subdivision plat probably about 6 months ago that created the lot that we're talking about. So we now have a legal lot that combined about 7.5 or 8 Old Town lots on that end of the property, and is the subject of this proposed ground lease. Since that lot was created, we started entering negotiations with the Boys and Girls Club on this ground lease. So our attorney, Jeff Parker, is on the phone, and obviously he was on the draft lease and can speak to any legal questions you might have regarding its terms. Starting on page 35, I do summarize a few of those terms for you in your packet. And really, I think I'll kind of wrap up with the idea that this is a next step in this whole journey. And yet you will have many more opportunities from a variety of different angles to have input and say in decision-making on this particular project and this particular property. So with that, I welcome any questions on the ground lease or the kind of side of this, but I'd also like to turn it over to Dustin and to Brian at your discretion.
Your thing. You'd like to share? Sure.
Well, thank you, Joseph. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Philip Puckett. This all started with to some extent as well, quite some time ago. So we're pretty thrilled to be at this point. There was a lot of back and forth on the lease that you have in your packet tonight. And thank you, Jeff Parker, who was our attorney for town, who was instrumental in getting to this point as well. So I think what we have here is a really good agreement that town and Boys and Girls Club can enter into and have confidence that our interests are protected, and we share a mutual interest, which is our community's children, our working families, and just having community assets where we can gather and have that sense of community. So with that, I just say thank you for your consideration of this agreement and for your approval of it. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to, from the Boys and Girls Club side, happy to help answer this. Also, like to thank Casey Martin, who was instrumental on our side to help representing, giving us legal counsel for the Boys and Girls Club. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thoughts, discussion?
Regina, this is Mark. I have a question if I could ask one, please.
Please.
Yeah, related to the ground lease, this might be too early to have this answer, but I was curious as far as the use agreement, as far as the town using the facility, do we know what that might be yearly as far as cost to town?
Yeah, I'll give it 2 cents and I obviously welcome your perspective as well. But right now that shared use agreement has not been discussed at any length. So I do think it's too early to give a definite range of dollars. And I think it'll really boil down to both the end design of the facility, what it can actually accommodate, and how that aligns with the rec department needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ability of the facility to meet town rec needs is going to largely determine what that ends up looking like. And then as far as time though, we've kind of always, it's been when the Boys and Girls Club or when the kids are out of school and they're supposed to be at the Boys and Girls Club, well, then the Boys and Girls Club need to be there for insurance purposes. We can't kind of like commingle uses. But then outside of that, it's for town rec to use as they will and as they desire. And so those will come in later agreements, shared use facility agreement that we would have. Would spell all that out and you would have input into that as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the line that says the town shall reimburse the club for any franchise fees paid by the club. What does that mean? What would we anticipate in the way of franchise fees?
Yeah, so the most prominent example of that is Singer Crystal Electric. When we are in a current franchise, we collect a franchise fee, or they collect a franchise fee on our behalf. Right now, that's a 1% fee. That may change depending on how the franchise agreement goes forward. But the idea behind this term was that if it's a nonprofit-owned facility on town-owned land that serves a community benefit, any dollar that can be saved by that program and that operation is $1 well spent. And so the idea would be that, say, electric bill is $200 for that month, whatever the franchise fee portion of that is, would be tracked. And at the end of the year, we can reimburse for that franchise fee portion. Since it's coming back into our budget anyways, it's sort of a net zero impact on town financially.
Okay, thank you.
So that it was going to be a small dollar amount, but it was one of those symbolic offerings and negotiations in which we said, look, this is a fee that makes sense in this particular circumstance.
Very good, thank you.
Which ultimately lowers the cost in that shared facility use agreement to town rec.
Anybody else? Questions? Thoughts? Not, there's an action item. So,
So before you, that is resolution number 4, which would approve the ground lease agreement with the Boys and Girls Club, which I think follows, the actual resolution follows page 37 in the ground lease documents thereafter.
I feel that this is something that we've been working towards, and we want the Boys and Girls Club to have a very nice facility for our kids. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve resolution number 4.
Second.
Swisher, Cobb, and then can we do a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Cobb. Yes. Trustee Hilton Hinga.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins,
Yes.
Trustee LaCretzi.
Yes,
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
And trustee Swisher.
Yes.
passes.
Thank you, trustees.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, next on the business agenda, we have the nomination of the National Register of Historic Places. And you wanna, it's your show.
Jump right back
Fred.
in. So once again, I'm going to try to keep my remarks extremely brief. We have with us Katie Welter and John O'Brien from both actually members of the HPC, as well as owner and owner's rep, I think, or board member of the proposed projects taking place at this location. So before you is a really exciting opportunity. You all have seen a couple of these nominations come across your tables before. But essentially, and I will defer to Katie and John to maybe fill in some color here, because I won't do it justice. But the idea is that while the courthouse building itself has been on the National Register for some time, that nomination did not include what used to be a jail, with the school administration building and old gym. And so this nomination is an effort, very concerted effort, to clean that up, to make sure that those buildings are recognized, and to actually include the school maintenance facility, which is the building to the north of those buildings. So really the action item before you tonight is to see whether you would agree with what the HPC concluded, which is found on page 99 of your packet. The HPC did unanimously agree with the nomination form that this nomination meets criteria A, that the properties associated with events that have made a significant contribution to broad patterns in our history, and criteria C, that the property embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, or represents the work of a master, or possesses high artistic values, or represents a significant and distinguishable entity whose components lack individual distinction. So we need either the mayor or mayor pro tem's signature on the nomination form, which will go back to History Colorado for the board meeting they have on January 20th. But I would want to turn it over to Katie to share some more information.
Yeah. Thank you all. Joseph, you did a nice job. You kind of really addressed the whole reason we're doing this updated nomination, which is in 1979, when the original National Register nomination was approved, it did not very clearly include the jail and gym, and yet the collection of buildings described has been recognized by the federal government as including those buildings, but there's absolutely no detail on them. And so we went back to the state, History Colorado, and the National Park Service, and we said, would it be helpful if we updated this nomination to give go beyond the 3-page original 1979 nomination and really say more about why these properties are significant And as Joseph mentioned, expand the boundary of the nomination to include the old county shop, now the maintenance building, school district maintenance building. And the reason all of these buildings are part of the National Register nomination is that they represent a continuum of public works in our community during really significant periods in the town's history. So the mining booms of 1882 and the 1960s, the climax mining boom in the 1960s, that's when the county courthouse and the jail were built, and then the county shop in the 1960s. And of course, the Great Depression in the 1930s is when the McGinnis Gymnasium was constructed, 1936. And so it's also significant these buildings to this day serve a public purpose and community benefit. And by cleaning up the nomination, so to speak, updating it as we are, it really elevates the significance of the property. We will have a publicly preserved record of the properties. The new nomination is I think it's about 50 pages with really great stories and history and pictures. That's on the National Park Service website. So we'll all be able to remember them as we should. But it also ensures that all of those properties will be eligible for really significant financial incentives to preserve them. In fact, just today we learned that the McGinnis Gym will receive another $800,000 from the state upon completion of the rehabilitation of that project. That would not be possible without this pending update. That pretty much assured the state, yes, you guys are you're making it legit. So we would really appreciate we appreciate everyone's ongoing enthusiasm and support for preservation of our community, but would appreciate the nomination support in this particular project. And John and I both are involved with Watershed Inc. We're both directors that now own the McGinnis Gym and the old jail, and working very hard to rehabilitate those buildings. I don't know if you want to add anything, John.
Well, Katie's been fantastic. She's spearheaded this effort. She's the support we've gotten from the state is phenomenal. We've gotten a $250,000 grant, 800 plus K tax credit. That will all go to the school, which will reduce the cost to the school to rehabilitate that gym. Plus, it'll improve for this community access to the gymnasium, which has been abandoned for what, 20 years. So we'll have a public facility at a discounted price supported by the state, all of which is driven by the trustees and the mayor's action back in 2015 when you put together the comprehensive plan that made us possible, the Historic Preservation Commission. So what the town did back then resulted in the effort that's occurring today. And it will yield a huge asset for our community. And Katie has put hundreds of hours into it. And I want to compliment her. She's amazing.
We had great support from the Vista Heritage, which of course owns the courthouse, as well as the school district, which both have provided formal letters of support with the nomination as well. Any questions?
It was fun reading through. I do my best to read through all the
They're dense.
It is dense, but it's like a huge history lesson, but it's amazing. I can't imagine the time it took to put all of that together, all the hard work, and the fact that you said something like this helps to bring in funding to rehabilitate, but it's not coming from the town, it's coming from the state and other entities. It's, in my opinion, a no-brainer. Thank you so much for all the time and energy you guys have put into this. It's amazing. So, questions from trustees? So what do you say?
One quick note, I will say, and Paul, thank you for pointing this out, but I had the wrong dates on this nomination form. So those will be updated when we actually have a final signature ready for you. I had 2022, it said 2023.
Question, is the main reason the shop is included just because it's on the property? Like, it's a county shop, it's just like a shed kind of thing. It just seems odd to include that.
Yeah.
All these other historic buildings.
I thought so too at first. It was actually John's idea originally. We ought to be thinking about this. You can think of it kind of like a historic district. That, you know, in this little Court Street corridor, what you have is, again, it's sort of a continuum of public buildings from 1882 to the 1960s. And that shop is, it has significant architectural features. It's not going to blow your mind, but part of what's significant about it is it really hasn't been changed much since it was originally built. It was built by government, continues to be used by government. All 4 of the buildings have been used by the school district over that time period. And you know, if it can be recognized, it can also qualify for these incentives to preserve it, if that's what the school district decides to do with it. I think it's worth noting that being listed on the National Register places no restrictions on what you do with the building in and of itself. And so that was something we did a lot of education with the school board about, because obviously they may want to do something completely different with that building. This does not prevent them from doing so. No strings attached to the National Register nomination. Just looks like an old shop.
Yeah. It's just odd. I was like, a 1960s shop, it's an old shop. Hey,
If it gets us more funding, that's not bad.
streets are dirt back then.
Yeah. Lots. Census here.
The town actually built it.
Oh.
Under the county owned the land, but then the town paid for it. So it's kind of a convoluted history, but all tied back into public ownership, public works.
Convoluted history.
Cindy.
So I would like to make a motion for us to authorize the mayor Tim to sign the nomination review form for the nomination of 506 and 516 East Main Street, 113 and 205 North Court Street to the National Register of Historic Places.
Second.
So Swisher, Hilton Hinga, and then we can do all in favor. I don't think we need roll call. So all in favor?
Aye.
Passes. There you go.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Come back sometime. Tell me more about the job.
Right, now we go on to business item C, Excel Energy, Multiponcha Springs electric transmission line rebuild project. All right, Lisa?
Yep.
Please.
I can't help myself but say how fantastic that is and how much work they put into that. And thanks for the history lesson a little bit there, John, and reminding us of the importance of what we do, what the trustees do, how long their decisions go into the future. That's a really good reminder. Thank you. Anyways, on to this next item. But before I get started, I want to let you know that we do have several attendees that are online here with us with Excel. So if you'll give me a moment to promote them to panelists after I give you a quick summary of my report, I'll get them in a position to where they can speak to you as well. So when I came back from being sick over the holiday, I came back to a package from them, and we had been in talks with Excel basically just through email. They have a couple of projects that they're doing that might affect the town farm to the north of town. And so what this particular project is that's been formalized in this package that's attached to this item is in order to replace existing transmission lines that go through an easement that is on the town farm. And right now we do have an easement. It's approximately 75 feet. They're asking in this package for 4 separate items. And the first one really is just to improve the accuracy of the existing easement. The legal description back in the late 40s, the technology wasn't as good for surveying, so it's an improvement basically. The second thing that they want to do is to purchase from us at their market rate that they've assessed some additional acreage, a little over 2 acres. And they're saying that this is to mitigate for blowout, which when he, and I'm sure he'll explain it to you as well when they speak, but this has to do with mitigating for objects that might be in that area, in that vicinity through hazardous weather or windstorms, that sort of thing. It's really not something that's attached to a regulation from the federal or state government. It's just kind of their policy and what they try and strive for. So they're asking for an increase in the easements. That's number 2. And then number 3, what they're trying to do is to add additional access for them to basically cross over the property and replace the facilities once installed. And this particular access really follows what we already have for a road there. And then the last item that they're asking has to do with seeking a temporary construction easement, which would be used for storage of machinery. And it describes it in that agreement that's attached as well. It does mention helicopters. Well, you would kind of find to be more industrial impact storage. And so it is a smaller storage area. I know there, just so you know, there are a couple of different projects that they're doing. This one is a smaller storage area, but they are actually asking us for a larger storage area for another project they're doing as well. They have given us, and in this report, you'll see that I said that there was a timeline to this. They asked us to respond by the 15th, which is why we put it on the agenda tonight so that we could get your feel for this, especially with them wanting to add to that easement. However, I've since talked to Mr. Curl, and he stated to me on the phone that that's more of a goal date. We can work with them if we need to. And I don't think that time is such a factor. I'll let him speak to that. A couple of things that I noted in the report is that, when it comes to the improvement of the existing easement, I don't think there's any issues with that. Cleanup is always good in a planner and subdivision rule in easements as well. And so that's not really something that we are concerned for. The additional really is a decision that you all have to make, and the access seems pretty reasonable. I do think that the amounts that they have attached to the review might be a little bit low in my recommendation, because we are having like our legal review it. And if we were going to do that, or you wanted us to pursue allowing the storage, I would really highly recommend that we have a revegetation expert that we are already in the process of hiring for another project. Just take a quick look at this and give us an idea of what sort of mitigation we need, especially this being a resource that's so important to town for future negotiations. So I've kind of laid that out. I've recommended that you allow myself and legal counsel, Jeff Parker, to work with them. Maybe get a little bit of our own market research done, because we weren't able to acquire that from them. They weren't able to give that to us as well, just to confirm that data. We are also waiting for the appraisal to come in that we had on this town farmland. So it would be nice to know what that comes in as. So if as long as they're willing to give us more time, I don't think that items 1 through 3 would be a problem, as long as we have time and we're able to work with our lawyer and negotiate that. The one that I think is the most sensitive is really the storage. And I guess I'm not really recommending that we support that unless we can at least have our revegetation specialists look at it. And they do have an hourly rate of $105 per hour if we accept. And so I would hope that we would be able to negotiate that fee be paid in that review, be added into that review. So those are my recommendations on it. Now give me 1 second here to go to the screen where I need to vote our attendees. So I think we've got Brittany, and we've also got Jen Harris. I guess I'm allowed to talk. And then we also have Brandon Hubbard. And I don't see his name up here. And then we've got also Russell. Can you all speak at this point? I should have allowed you opportunity to do so.
Hello there, Lisa. This is Brittany Schoborg. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you. Help you successfully.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. All right, I think you all should be promoted at this point to be able to talk. So I'll let you, if there's anything you wanted to add. And, you know, I know Russell, we had a conversation kind of after I prepared the report, and it came on so quickly after the break. So if there's anything that you wanted to add, please feel free. There you are.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for putting this on the agenda. I know it was a last minute process for you, and I hope you're feeling better. And yeah, you covered a lot of those bases, and I appreciate you doing that for us. We do have an existing, Excel does have an existing easement on that property. We are looking to clean up the legal description on it. It was made a long time ago, so we're looking to just make sure that that's you know, up to today's standards. They're also looking for what's called a blowout, which is what you mentioned earlier as well. So we're wanting to widen that easement just a little bit. What that really does is that allows Excel to effectively clean that area of easement from large tree growth, is what I think they're most worried about in this general area, from any high wind activity, from electrical lines being pushed into those trees and causing problems with those trees and electrical lines coming together. You don't have a lot of those large trees on this particular piece of property, so I don't think it's going to affect you too much. But according to our computer simulations, it looks like it is a possibility with the winds in this area to push those electrical lines away from the existing easements, outside of that existing easement. So we just like to keep everyone safe as far as that goes. We're also looking for the permanent access road. That permanent access road is mainly the road that already exists on the property. It just allows Excel's employees during construction and into the future during their normal operation and maintenance to come in and let their linemen know how to access the easement, to look at those lines and do maintenance if they have to. So it won't be used very heavily after construction. The last thing that we were looking for was the temporary pullback location. And that's an area that is temporary. It's not going to be a storage location. It is going to be used for equipment to come in and help them string the wire, the new electrical lines from one location to another. And we're talking about a use of maybe 2 to 3 weeks. It's not going to be there very long. We can have bring in our environmental team to take a look at that. They can work in conjunction with your own team in order to make sure that everything is being, you know, treated properly. And we can always work with your team to make sure that reclamation issues are addressed before and after any of this occurs. But it won't be used for a storage facility. The storage location that we were originally asking you for isn't a part of this particular package. And as far as price goes, I'm sure that we're always willing to hear what you have to say as far as price. and timing. Obviously, the 15th is not something that we're going to be holding you to. It was a form letter that we'd sent out to everybody, but we knew the town was going to be a little bit more of a process, and that's fine. And so we still have a good couple of weeks in order to allow you guys to take a look at this, let your attorneys take a look at this, and see if you can't get your market study back to see if we can come to an agreement on price.
Yeah, thanks for the details, Russell. I don't know if Jen or I have anything else to add specifically. I do have just a really brief, I don't know if it's possible to share my screen, just an overview of what that temporary construction easement area, it's for a pole site to pole conductor, as Russell mentioned. And I would say that it just goes barely outside of the easement area. It is 100% necessary to pull the new wires that are being used to replace it. Nothing would be stored beyond maybe pulling equipment overnight. It would be a very short time frame of use. Like I said, a matter of weeks of occupation. I don't know if it is possible, but this may provide some color on both the road and the easement needs. If I could share my screen briefly, if it might be helpful. If it takes too much time, I can also not.
No, I think that you can share your screen if you wanted to try.
Okay, I'll try, and if it's too much, we'll just do it really briefly, and I think it might just provide some really helpful color on the situation.
Okay.
Let's see. I think it pulled up okay. And share. Let me know if you guys can see this okay.
Yep.
Okay, and I just want to point out a few things just to visually go over. So this is the existing 75-foot easement. You'll see that yours is, we're asking for an additional, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I want to say it's approximately 40 feet on either side. And this additional width is due to the fact that it's in the wind, it is going to blow substantially to the sides. The way you would theoretically avoid this is by adding more poles to have a smaller amount of swing in the blowout. And obviously we do not want to add more poles onto the property. And this would be to safely, avoid having any obstructions that would be a safety risk in the area. And then I would say this gray box is where the pole site would be planned. And this is that temporary construction easement. And maybe it's something we can work with your attorneys on to limit the language to very much clarify. It is not for storage of any, long-term, I mean, it's only, I think, a year or two of term, but it will only be used for a matter of weeks to simply pull conductor while we restring all the wires needed for the transmission line. So it's really a temporary use for that specific need. I think our form maybe seems like it covers more things than it does, and it would in other situations, but maybe we can work with your attorneys to clean this up in a way that makes it less limited in scope for your use, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So hopefully this, and then here's the access road, if that helps too. So we aren't trying to, build or propose anything new, just make sure we're compensating you for road that exists and our use on that road to safely patrol this going forward, and then temporarily use it to get on construction to replace these structures. Those are my kind of couple notes from internal Excel. I didn't know, Jen Harris, if you wanted to add anything as well, but I will stop sharing my screen and hope this provided a little bit of a visual of what we're asking for.
Brittany, if you could
go
keep
ahead.
that up, that would be good. So the only thing that I would like to add is that the access, of course, for construction is going to be a lot more heavily used when they're replacing and replacing. So putting in the new poles and then removing the existing structures or the poles. But the reason that this is being asked for permanent use, like Russell and Brittany said, is for the Excel lineman patrolman to patrol. So he monitors, he'll come in a couple times a year. That's usually maximum when they would need to. And especially after the rebuild, the access will be very, I mean, it's very minimal usage as far as that goes. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that it's not going to be on a, you know, regular basis, weekly basis or anything like that.
And I guess my only other note would be on compensation. As Russell said, we are flexible to work with the town of Buena Vista and want to compensate you fairly. Typically, we try to go with 100% of fee value for anything permanent. So we'll try to determine what a fair going rate is for a property of this size and property of this use, and compensate, you know, the town or any other entity in this area for the full amount of the fee value for anything permanent. For temporary, it'll just be based, you know, on the use for that duration. But we hope we can find a negotiated agreement. And if you believe compensation's higher, we are all ears to hear you out, make sure you're being compensated at market value. But I think that's it on the screen share. If there's any other questions we can address, more than happy to chat or reach out to Russell in the future as well.
Thanks so much for sharing a bit, and Lisa, thanks for getting the conversation going. I'll just start with just a few things and then trustees. You did actually answer.
I'm so sorry. I'm curious. So Brandon Hubbard is actually on this call. I think he was wanting to say something real quick and he's muted. He's the design engineer on this project.
Is it okay to?
Yeah, let's just keep it, because we do have a time frame on this and we'd like to have discussion. So
Brandon, are you there? Can you, I moved over to my panelist list, so you should be able to speak, perhaps. Are you there?
I think he's unmute maybe.
Yes, sorry, I don't have anything to add. I was just letting you know that I am here to answer any questions you got, so.
Right.
And Brandon is the engineer who's done engineering design on this project. So if you have any more specific questions, it's great to have him on board.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so one of my questions, which you answered, was how long is temporary? Because, you know, say one thing, it could be something else. And I would think that maybe there's a way that could be written down that if it is 2 to 3 weeks, that it really does remain 2 to 3 weeks. And that's not an open-ended type situation. But and then one of my other questions originally was, where are, you know, this 2.174 acreage, but you displayed that in the information. It's not like one huge chunk, it's to widen the road. So thanks for that. That makes sense to me. And the last thing I was wondering is if, and it doesn't seem like you are, but I'll ask anyway, but you're not planning on building any version of structures on any of the space that you would potentially want, like along that easement. I know you said you need to widen it so that you can, there's no trees in the way and such, but I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't some version of a potential structure that would be, you know, created as well.
Russell, I think you had mentioned to me at one point in time that they would be putting a box there, or was that, and I know there's several projects going on here, so we have 2 different projects, so I may be confusing them, but if you could expand on if there's a box that you're going to be putting there, but it sounds like maybe not now, or.
No, not for this package. These are the things that Excel is going to need in order to facilitate their rebuilding of this transmission line. Now, I had spoken to you previously about the possibility of leasing a much larger area on this property for a temporary construction yard. That would have a meetup trailer. So I think that's the box you're referring to. But this isn't a part of this package, and I don't want to confuse you or the town with what Excel needs versus what Excel wants.
Right.
But we are happy to come back and discuss that and show you where this area would be if And I think we were waiting on your environmental team to kind of take a look at that to see what issues that they would have on that.
For the larger project, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, and Lisa, I just want to clarify that when we talk about structures, we're talking about the transmission line poles.
Okay.
They're not actual buildings.
Yeah.
This would be very helpful, Jen. And then Brandon, can you confirm that the poles that are planned are in the same locations and there's no additional or interesting structures on this property?
Yeah, they're all going to be in the same general vicinity, I would say within 10 feet or so of the existing poles. And we're going from a 2-pole type structure to a single pole. So it will look slightly different. They will be steel instead of wood, but other than that, they're going to be in the same general vicinity and will take up a smaller footprint.
Great. Trustees, questions, thoughts?
I guess
Discussion?
I would ask Lisa and Jeff if they have any remaining concerns and how we would word, I don't know, our approval of this, given that more research needs to be done.
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I was just gonna say, I was just looking at the wording in that temporary construction easement document, and it has in parent 3 storage of materials and equipment. So I think it's not quite accurate as to what they're asking for. So I think we need to do like some revamping of this agreement. And we can specify in there no structures or anything that you give us. But Jeff, you can add it too.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think if you wanted to approve this tonight, subject to revisions that we can agree upon with Excel, I would just work with Lisa and Excel here to revise the documents to sort of reflect what the presentation was about. And we'd address a temporary storage facility to basically be for just pulling equipment only. We could talk about the price. I'll let Lisa work with that. We could do a little, I guess, a little more detailed provision about the revegetation, just to make sure that the town gets what it needs for its potential future uses for the property. So if you wanted to approve it, you could do it subject to revisions approved by the town attorney and by town administrator. And then we just work with Excel to get the language that you're looking for.
Thanks.
And I think just to be clear, this would be for this particular project. And so, I think the other thing that we were talking about with Excel, we would just treat it separately.
Yeah, I wouldn't really feel comfortable approving anything quite yet until staff and legal have time to look over this. I fully support the staff recommendation on this. I don't see anything like at the moment, given the current information, that are huge red flags, but I want to make sure that, our number one priority for that property is water. And as long as it's not affecting our water right and, keeping the value of that water right intact and along with the revegetation expert and any costs I would hope would be, reimbursed by Excel in order to pursue moving forward with this, but I don't really see approving anything quite yet with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like it's more of, we have several questions outstanding now that we have the timeline pushed, which is really helpful and we appreciate, because I think kind of the crunch was put in a different position. But answering those questions, obviously this is, we can even address later, but I really appreciated the memo covering this and showing how this decision touches multiple different things that the town needs to consider. And so I think going with a revegetation expert and really understanding the impacts that we're agreeing to ahead of time would be great. So instead of agreeing to anything with revisions of which you guys discuss, I think it'd be even better for us to have an idea of what those revisions actually look like before we agree.
Mark?
Yeah, I had one comment, just kind of related to access off Highway 24. I do believe we have some properties that we rent back in there. I just want to make sure they always have access to those units back in there as far as that access road. That was the only thing I just kind of jumped out at me.
Cindy, do you have any thoughts?
In the storage and whatever, it did have us read about that, potential adverse effects to the land and water right negotiations in the future. I would want that cleared up before I voted for them. And storage on the property. I would think that wherever they had some of their equipment, that we would want to make sure that there wasn't hazardous waste spills or anything like that, and that they would be responsible for any of that. Yeah, there are some concerns.
Yeah, environmental impacts and such. I agree. I think there's consensus here somewhat. I know there's no resolution or action type thing, but it seems like to hold off and look into it more, clean up the verbiage, find out more information and bring this back later on. I think if the rest of the trustees agree, I think that's kind of what we like to go with.
Okay, so you'd like it to come back on a future agenda for approval once we clean up the, and to be clear, because there's 4 different things that we're doing with them here. And I think the most critical one is the storage. And so do you think that the board is okay with us moving forward with the first 3 things? Just administratively, or if you were to approve that additional, the piece that I feel the board definitely needs to approve the additional add to the easement. And I don't know, Jeff, maybe you can chime in, but I would think that's the one that they need to approve. And I don't. So we can
It seems like if we're gonna take it back, we might as well just take it all back at once, so everything's cleaned up and the board can see it all. I mean, I guess it doesn't, to me, it just seems like we could, if you approve 3 and wait for the other, it's still not gonna help Excel because they need that temporary easement to even do the work they're planning on doing. So I guess my suggestion would be, let's just bring it all back to the board. Try and shoot for your next meeting in 14 days if we can do it.
Okay.
And then if for some reason we get stalled out, we'd have to delay it to another meeting, but I don't think I don't think we'll need more time.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
So I think some of the things here might relate to number 4, might have that effect. So like Jeff said, I think it is better for it to all go back. I understand the, maybe the few are easier to approve, maybe the number 4, but I think it just makes sense to wait on all of it, so.
Yeah, the only reason that I was getting clarity is because the revegetation specialist, we're working with our whitewater engineers to, they just got that subcontract scope. And so we're just finalizing that too. So before I do have a meeting, I think very soon in the next day or so with them. So it sounds like you're all on board for that, which I think is a crucial piece. And it's an expert that we need access to for more than just this project. And so as long as you're okay with me, doing that, basically how Philip and I are approaching this is that without Vincent on staff, we have some monies that we're not utilizing for that position. And so that'll go towards that, as from a budgetary standpoint, go towards these reviews with this expert, just so you know. But may just take a couple of days to get that piece, and I don't know how long it will take them to look at this, but I would want them to look at this for the storage. So we'll try and shoot for the next meeting, but just so you know, that might delay a little bit of their schedules. All right. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. I know somebody brought up the access to the rental properties on, in that area. I just want to clarify that the access of these easements are non-exclusive when it comes to access. So there would be no restriction as far as the renters getting back to their houses, or structures on property, wherever they need to get to. And then the other thing, Lisa, that I wanted to bring up is that when it comes to environmental concerns, we work with entities like Climax Mine on a regular basis. We have for years, and can create environmental management plans that we can maybe work with you guys as far as like on the storage yard. We've worked with Climax, so I think that we could maybe work with you guys to come up with some kind of plan on re-veg and a plan for the yard as well, and restrictions, or whatever you guys are wanting, we can work with you guys on that.
That all sounds excellent. All right, cool. I think we have our directions, so we're going to move on to next group. Guys, thank you so much for being on tonight and sharing that with us and explaining a little bit more. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so up next, we have item D, notice of award for Stanek Constructors Inc. And Sean, I think this one's you.
It is. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board. Yeah, staff is requesting a notice of award to Stanek Constructors for their guaranteed maximum price for the CMAR proposal cost of $4,735,801. I just wanted to say that once. Yeah, so back in July, we advertised, and Stanek was awarded the project. We went to an agreement with Stanek to provide the town completion of 60% design construction documents in the price model. Since that time, JBA and the Stanek team and the town staff have gotten to the 90% construction documents model. And part of that agreement that we had with Stanek was that the GMP, guaranteed maximum price, was going to be being provided for the town. And if the town of Stanek agreed to that guaranteed maximum price, which is that 4.7 that we're talking about tonight, we would go into a notice of award and enter into an agreement with Stanek Constructors for the water plant expansion project. So a little bit's changed. The price was considerably lower back in July. There's a few things that, obviously for designing it, we're meeting CDPHE review and requirements at 60% and at 90%. And so there's been this crazy world that we're living in where amazing opportunities for funding resources, but the inflation index has been pretty aggressive. So we probably saw that 18% increase in cost in one quarter this year. So that's starting to taper off. But in a nutshell, we thought we were going to probably be closer to that four number, but we're not, and it is what it is. We're a little bit late to the dance on this. We were wanting to get this done in December, and I don't know if you guys recall, but we were hoping to have this in place in December. One of the main reasons why we kind of pumped the brakes a little bit was because we had funding opportunities with Dolan. And so, like Lisa stated earlier, we were awarded that grant in December 22nd. So with that, we realized that, okay, the GMP that Stanek provided is achievable. It's very achievable. And now we have, about 300,000 contingency as well. So looking at that, it makes it very feasible. One of the reasons we kind of wanted to wait and see how it went was, we didn't know if we were going to have to cut costs. We didn't know if we were going to have to maybe not be able to put a new roof on the building and things like that. We're not looking for amenities at all. We're just looking to see where do we have to try to save money. This is providing us an opportunity to do the project based on the CMAR guaranteed price. The you know, there are some items that were pretty high, and I apologize if you wanted to see the breakdown in the table, but it's a lot. And it's, we'd spent all night describing it all and trying to get out in front of it. But I feel like, you know, we've been working on this project for, you know, quite a while now, and we know what design and we know how we're treating the water, and nothing's changed there. The engineers have been fantastic, and we've stayed the course with the Harmsco cartridge filtration systems and CDPHE reviews. We have two small items that CDPHE is asking us to resolve, not a treatment design issue, but more of a survey issue. So if we build something a certain way, let's make sure we know that this is working the right way. You know, maybe groundwater introduction into a clear well, things like that. So pretty good evaluation and pretty good lens that CDPHE provides. This is a 689-page technical project manual. It's extensive. We have items in there that are established, that were established early on. The pre-selected equipment, the Harmsco filters, you know, the things that we know what we want to use. What we've spent the last few months working on is like, should we buy this transfer pump or that transfer pump? Because maybe this transfer pump is, you know, X amount cheaper, but maybe the mechanical seals tend to leak, you know, sooner than the other one, things like that, you know, stainless steel versus powder coated, all kinds of stuff like that. On-site generation for chlorine, we're doing that. You know, we're removing the most dangerous, you know, facility in Buena Vista with this project. So we're doing some fantastic things. So I won't bore you too much with everything that's in the technical manual. I will just say that there's sections in there that are pretty high level, and CDPHE has reviewed everything up to this point where we're at. And we're at a 90% project manual. We're at a 90% project design, and we are at a point now where we can enter, you know, give static notice to proceed and begin the contract forming process. So the contract forming probably is going to take several weeks, 2 weeks possibly. There's performance bonding, there's payment bonding, and at 4.3 million, I think Static will need to secure that from their agencies and help them with their financing and funding and things like that. Will require Jeff's lens on this for the contract, and that's kind of where we're at. The cool thing is we have the money budgeted to do this project. We have the SRF loan for 4.3, and we have the DOLA grant for $700,000, and we have it in our budget. So there was a couple things I guess we wanted to make sure that we, you know, JVA, they're absolutely fantastic. They've helped us through a lot of different things when we didn't see them coming, you know, and the letter support that they provided for the Static team is they worked with Static before Static does this. They have subcontractors that are ready to go. They're ready to secure pricing, and I think that we should probably move into this as soon as we can. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much what I have. Yeah, if you have any questions, please ask me. So.
Well, thanks so much for going through that. And I mean, I was gonna say, I know Philip's on, but everything's square with the budget, and we've gone through that already, but that was my only thought process was to check in there, but sounds like that's fine.
Mayor, if you don't mind, I just kind of want to touch on, you know, how time sensitive some of this it's I don't know how Philip slept in December, but I think he slept very well in December because there's things that are happening, right? So I think the one thing that once we get into the contract docs and, you know, Jeff reviews them and we get them signed and approved and we're ready to sign the notice to proceed, it would be great if we had an idea of maybe we have the DOLA grant signed as well, because that's going to be critical for expenses. So that's a little bit challenging right now. So hopefully everything kind of lands on its feet on this. I don't know, Philip, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered it well. Everything's in budget. Everything in on this project, we're probably looking at about 7.2, including contingency, and 4.4 of that is covered by grants and forgivable loan principal. So everything looks good on the financial side for this project as presented by Sean and team.
Great. Thank you, Philip. Team, thoughts? Proceed. All right.
Ready to move ahead?
Okay. Well, I'd entertain a motion.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 5.
Second.
So we have Roe Cobb. And then if we could do a roll call vote, Paula, please.
Trustee Cobb. Yes. Trustee Hilton Hinga.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee LaCretzi.
Yes.
Trustee Rowe.
Yes.
And Trustee Swisher.
Yes.
Nice work, you all.
Yeah, motion
Great work.
passes. Very good. All right, lots of money. Okay, so let's see then. Then we are on to business item E, JPA Consulting Engineers, Inc., agreement to provide construction administrative service. I think that's.
Yeah, that's me as well. And yeah, I apologize to the trustees online. I dropped off a quick memo in support for that request for ABA's construction administrative services. I just wanted to kind of reiterate, there's a very descriptive exhibit with the agreement. The last 2 pages shows exactly what they're providing, and really what this is they're driving this home for us. So we have another item that we wanted to see where we were at with engineering services, either town provided or for JVA provided. So what we're looking at right now is basically construction administrative services for the entire project. So both phases of the project, the CWCB raw water component, the 2.2 portion that is still being worked on as well with JVA, but also for this project. So basically giving Stanek, the ability to have a service provided so that they can, if there's any discrepancies between the agreement, the 689-page project manual, JVA resolves that, reporting to any outside agencies, reporting to the town of Buena Vista staff and liaisons or owner's rep, and really just to make sure that the project is run to the level that the SRF loan requires it to as well. So, yeah, should drive us home.
Great, thanks. That's a mouthful of stuff, that's for sure. Trustees, thoughts, questions?
Ready to move ahead.
Move ahead. Mark, you're all good? I don't want to, okay. Don't want to forget you. I know sometimes on Zoom is tricky. Well then, there's no questions, thoughts, discussion. I'd entertain a motion for resolution number 6.
And make a motion to approve resolution number 6.
I'll second.
Commissioner Rowe. And then a roll call vote. When you're ready, Paul.
Cobb. Yes. Trustee Hilton Hinga.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee LaCretzi.
Yes.
Trustee Rowe.
Yes.
And Trustee Swisher.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to the final business item of the night. So we're going to talk about grant applications and affordable and workforce housing. And Joseph, I think it's your floor again.
Absolutely. Thank you. I hate to say this, but the staff report for this is on page 205. So you all want to pull that up at some point, Lisa, and I do want to call out Lisa Andrew Ashley from DOLA with the Division of Housing to a panelist, so he'll be able to participate in our conversation as you all would like. And I just want to say a very strong thank you to Andrew for taking the time out of his late evening to join us on last minute requests to talk about these transformational housing grant programs. So I'll give a brief overview and I look forward to discussing this all with you. So as you all know, last meeting at which I was not there, but I have gotten a firm summary and rundown. Paul gave public comment about this grant opportunity and the fact that DOLA would suggest if an infrastructure grant is coming in, it comes from the town. And the resulting discussion from you all, I understand, was robust. And so we're at a point now where there's 2 grant programs, and I want to just briefly touch on both of them, as well as 2 projects, right? Carbonate Street and a crossing, and 2 grant programs. One grant program, which is the first talked about on page 205, leading into 206, is the one that you all have heard about before from me. It's the Innovative Housing Opportunities Incentives Grant Program, or IHOI. Not sure who comes up with the acronyms, but this is the sister grant to the IHOP planning grant that we had. As you all recall, that planning grant was, the purpose of that was to help municipalities identify strategies that they could implement that would then qualify them to apply for implementation dollars, right? So the idea was you do a planning grant, you become qualified through qualifying strategies, and then you apply for construction dollars, implementation dollars to actually build something or do other things like land banking or infrastructure, those kinds of things. The IHOI grant, there were only 2 rounds in this grant program. The first one, and a total of, I think, $40 million available. The first one was a very sort of small round for projects that were ready to literally start within a couple months from their applications. That was done about this time last year. I think about $22 million was given out in that round, so there's about $18, $19 million left. We submitted a letter of intent or interest in this grant program for Carbonate Street in September 1st. We had a pre-application meeting with a variety of folks from DOLA and Division of Housing in November, and then we got the formal invitation to apply for this grant in mid-December. So we have a grant application due January 31st. And so for this program, it would only fund construction costs related to units that serve 80% households or under for Carbonate Street. So to put that in different words, we would need to demonstrate that funds we request and use from this grant program only go to pay for units that serve 80% households or less. So as you might recall, the AMI range of Carbonate is 60 to 120. So there's a good chunk of units right now. That number is hopefully around 30 to 40% of the units would be at or below 80% AMI. And therefore we have plenty of eligible expenses that we could use to qualify for this grant. So this particular grant program, I'm really looking for your blessing to move forward and finalize that application. If you do give that blessing tonight, you will see a resolution on your next agenda formally authorizing a submittal of the application. I don't know, we can decide with Jeff and Lisa, but that may end up being a consent agenda item since you all might be giving your blessing tonight. So that's that program. And I want to just briefly summarize the other one and then obviously take your direction on questions. The other grant program is described on page 206, and I've mentioned it before. It's the Transformational Affordable Housing Homeownership and Workforce Housing Grant Program. A mouthful, so we just call it the Transformational Housing Program. This was created out of House Bill 22-1304, which I think, and Andrew can correct me if I'm wrong, but it represents the largest single year investment in affordable housing in the state's history. So this particular grant program has about $140 million in it, and it's set up in monthly rolling grant deadlines. So the first deadline was a letter of intent in December 10th. And I'll let Andrew speak if you all have questions about that round. There was a lot of interest, as you can imagine. Hundreds of millions of dollars requested for thousands of units across the state. And then each month now after, so today is the deadline for an LOI if we want to apply at the end of January. As you might imagine, as Reed and Paul both shared earlier, there's a sense of urgency with this grant program. And so for the 2 projects at hand, I'll speak first to Carbonate. there's a sense of urgency that we get a letter of intent in for Carbonate Street to this grant program. This program is beautiful in the sense that not only is there a lot of money available, but they also create, the legislation creates a designation for rural resort communities, which Chaffee County is classified as that, and allows for a broader definition of AMIs that are eligible for funding. Whereas that incentives grant program only serves up to 80% AMI, this program can actually serve up to 170% AMI. So all of Carbonate Street units would qualify in this. Not to mention the childcare component of Carbonate Street is also sort of a bonus feature or ups our competitiveness in the eyes of this program. So in your packet, I have prepared a letter of intent with your blessing, we would submit. As you know, Paul Andrews at the Crossing has been working extremely diligently with Reed and with Becky to ask the question, how can the Crossing benefit the community the most? Not just be another market rate development, but how can it benefit the community? And so that particular request, as you discussed last time, needed more discussion. And so the idea behind the staff report here is that there's two options presented. One is submitting an LOI only for Carbonate Street. The second would be submitting an LOI that would name both projects. And based on guidance from Andrew, as recently as yesterday, that is what DOLA would recommend, is putting in a joint LOI. And if each project is deemed worthy, then each project would be requested to submit a separate application that you would also need to authorize to submit those separate applications. So this LOI is, I think as Reed mentioned earlier, it's an opening of the door. It's saying, we want these projects to succeed and we think they both qualify for this grant program. And then we're waiting for DOLA to say, yes, go ahead and apply. So with that, first, I might turn it over to Andrew to correct anything I said wrong. And then second, obviously back to the trustees to direct questions.
I don't think you said anything wrong. Can you guys hear me? All right.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that was very good summation of the program. I will just, briefly mention in that December 10th LOI round, we got, I think, about 55 LOIs for about, I don't know, $355 million or something like that. And we have about 140 to give away. So it's a super competitive, super popular program. From Division of Housing's perspective, I think there is this transformational component to it, which is a little bit different than our normal gap funding. And, I mean, that's an argument that the town has to make. But I think that, however many units, whether it's 50 or whether it's 170 through both projects for workforce housing, serving those kind of like middle income AMIs is, I mean, there's a really good case to be made, but I'm happy to, answer any questions that you guys have.
Great. Thank you. I actually have a question for Philip. And this was actually from Libby, and so I'm just kind of helping out on this one. So Philip, if you can hear me, question really was, if you can provide somewhat of an estimate on how much staff cost potentially would be increased by tracking the Crossings infrastructure grant funds.
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. I mean, I guess the closest thing I can compare it to is what we currently do with public improvement agreements. Sean, put your earmuffs on. That's a difficult process. It's a challenging process that we're continually trying to evaluate how we, public improvement agreements are typically for private development subdivisions where we require money up front to secure their public improvement agreements, and then they request draws as they progress through the development, after review by Sean, after review by myself, eventually by Lisa. it's a pretty time consuming process, to be honest with you, especially evaluating the public infrastructure. In this case, I guess we would be doing that regardless because that's part of our standard process. But there would be the added component of getting reimbursement, and we would be the ones submitting that. So sorry, Gina, I'm not doing a very good job answering your question, but it's certainly an added flavor that we don't typically do. I think kind of going back to what I was proposing earlier, having the proper level of staffing, at least on my team, I would feel comfortable once we are staffed with that, to be able to take on this in addition to the other grants and things that we're working on. But it's a great question. We just haven't done it before, so it's hard to really predict what would be required, but that's a lot of public improvements.
Thanks so much, Philip. I think that was helpful in just explaining that. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I have two questions, one for Andrew and one for Joseph. But one of the topics that came up in our last discussion, last meeting, was if there would be any conflict or, we were working a lot on carbonate, but if we're doing this jointly, is there going to be any conflict of not getting funds because we have two competing in the town? And we were kind of going back and forth if, they're going to cannibalize each other to a certain extent. And I know there was some discussion there, but if you could kind of speak to some of those thoughts, or if somebody else has a better way of describing the discussion last meeting.
From my perspective, no. If you package both applications both projects into one application from the town, I think that's pretty compelling, especially that public-private partnership is something that the Division of Housing always looks for. I think if you were to separate the applications and have, say, Chaffee Housing Authority apply for a crossing and, the town apply for Carbonate Street, then that's like legit competition, I think, and the thing is like, it's a super popular program, tons of interest. We've gotten a lot of, straight up $10 million requests from, rural resort communities. So there's no guarantee. So I think, getting the foot in the door and at least, throwing your hat in the ring or throwing your name in the hat. Is that it? Something like that. Yeah.
We follow.
Probably all of the above.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. And then Joseph, I think the other question we went over a little bit last time, and I know I've kind of been thinking about could be precedent setting to a certain extent. Signing on to a letter saying we support this, then sets a standard for if anybody else does the work ahead of time. And I think I want to acknowledge that too, that all the work you have done, that the developer has done and worked with all the different entities, done all the paperwork. If somebody has done all of that work, do we just set a precedent saying, yes, we're going to move forward? And I think, and moving beyond just this one program, because obviously this program has a shelf life and is very specific to certain things, but how we kind of think about it in terms of setting a precedent. I think one thing in particular is also there's some zoning changes that need to go into place for the crossings that haven't been set yet, if that's not mistaken. But my limited understanding so far is it seems like most major developments right now, there's some zoning change to a certain extent. So how do we think of that?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. I think it's a crucial one. As we heard earlier from John about the longevity of the impact of your decisions, this idea of setting precedent is huge. And I would advocate for the viewpoint that you're setting a positive precedent. That the precedent you're setting is that if we have a developer who's willing to put in the work proactively without staff time, literally all I did when I sat down with Paul for the first day was, here's Reed McCullough's information, here's Becky Gray's information, you should reach out to them. That's all I did. If we have a developer doing that and brings to us a proposal to make 55% of their development affordable, I would hope that we again support that in the future. So I think we're setting a positive precedent. I do think your point about this particular program, back to Andrew's comments about its popularity, we kind of expect this program to last 6 months at the most. So the likelihood of another developer being ready to be able to submit an LOI on this program, extremely small. But if it happens, I think that's a great thing, right? It demonstrates that our development community is starting to pay attention to what we want. If a development community wants to go for other grants that require town participation in the future, I think it's a great precedent to say, if you do the work, we will support. Not a guarantee of funds, but we need affordable housing. If we're going to say that, then yeah, we'll support. So that's my viewpoint. To the entitlements needed, yes, they need a rezone. And I think the question of rezone often comes back to what's the impact on not only surrounding areas, but the community as a whole. Can we, you as the decision makers, stomach and support higher density, period? Can you? And I think if there's a pathway towards making a significant amount of impact on affordable housing, that's a really great reason to help justify higher density. If there's no other community benefit, I think it becomes a much more difficult question to wrestle with. So by no means is a rezone a already decided case. It's not. But I do think that this is one piece of the puzzle that should be considered as a part of that case once it does come before you.
Other thoughts, Sue?
I have a question about the affordability code audit. You talked about how it'll be impacted our competitiveness because we haven't approved any recommendations. What's happening with that? Didn't we talk about bringing that back and approving each thing one by one? And if we are to approve anything in that code audit, what would the timeline be to help our competitiveness in this project?
Yeah. So couple thoughts. So this goes back to the incentives grant program, right? So I want to make sure that we're disconnecting this from implications for the crossing or for the transformational program period. The incentives grant program requires that in order to apply, a municipality has to have implemented at least 3 out of the 15, I think, qualifying strategies. Like this menu, right? In the state statute, qualifying strategies are X, Y, Z. From the get-go, when that legislation passed, Buena Vista had already implemented 3 of those strategies. So from even before we applied for the planning grant, we technically qualified. So we met that minimum threshold. Yes, we qualified. That program is, again, very popular, very competitive, right? There's more dollars that are going to be requested than are dollars available. And so I felt it was important to include that sentence that the level at which the recommendations from the code audit have been implemented will be considered. Whether or not that's a deciding factor in us getting funding, I can't speak to. When the code audit was presented back in September, it didn't feel like there was strong desire to bring forward with urgency that package. It was more of we need to assess these one by one. So we have been making progress with consultants that were on that project. We used up the rest of our budget to draft some code language. And we actually just met today with the planning department looking at a package of code changes that would include some of those elements from that code audit that we're going to start bringing up to planning and zoning next week, and then start bringing forward the code amendment process. So you all will see some of those. We won't have those implemented by the time we apply for the incentives grant program.
Okay.
But the stage at which they are by the time we get to an award may have an impact on an award amount. I don't know. So I don't think it's a black or white thing. I just think it's one consideration.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. I just wanted some more clarification on that. That helped.
I do think just doing the affordability audit itself is like half of that step. And,
absolutely.
The other thing was, I kind of looked back through that, and that was really a work session that we discussed that the consultants came and they presented. and discussed that. There was no action to that. And we also had the historical preservation asking us to do some things that were contradictory to some of the things that were in the affordable housing audits. So you think taking that time to make sure that we fulfilled the needs and vetted through the two things appropriately, which is what staff is doing right now, is I think that's acceptable. And I think that I don't know, who knows what they'll think, but to me, there's half of that effort's already been done. And I don't think it's unheard of to have not accepted or put that on the agenda and then just approved it, because some of that stuff was pretty radical as a whole package. And so we really needed to vet through that and just choose the ones that work for BB and make it our own affordable housing audit.
And I will say, I mean, DOLA, to close out the planning grant, right? They requested the status and the report of what we've done. And I provided that draft code language that our consultants created with that money, right? And they were really excited about that draft code language. They felt a lot of those elements were groundbreaking. So I think it's not a black or white, yes, no, good, bad. We're on a continuum of working towards implementation of many different things, including things from that audit. And I think the representatives from DOLA that I've talked with have recognized that.
Cindy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think it's something that we should pursue. There's always something developers want to make their projects for the lower end more affordable. This gives them the opportunity that saving them any money on a tap fee or the amount of money is not comparable. This could really make a difference. And so I'm thinking it is something that we should pursue.
Mark, what do you think? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with all this. Thank you for everyone who's done all the work on it. And I think it's a great opportunity for us and we should move forward with it for sure.
I'm on board too.
All right. I think major question here really is which one? So A or B. I think that's
Go
the
for both.
Yeah, I favor both.
both.
Yeah, just I'm persuaded by what Joseph has said and what Andrew said.
Do you want a motion?
Yeah, it's a
Bradley?
joint letter, like it's
Yeah.
package.
Joint letter.
As the
Yeah,
package.
and what our guests said. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to direct staff to submit a joint LOI through my mouth. This is about a joint LOI for Carmen Street in the crossing version B to the transformational housing grant program immediately following the meeting and to prepare a full application to the IHOI grant program, parentheses, Carmen Street only.
I feel like you should pronounce it Ahoy.
It's like Avatar or something.
I second.
Okay, we have Joe, Cobb, and then when you're ready, Paul, if I could get a roll call vote.
Yes. Inga.
Yes.
Trustee Jenkins.
Yes.
Trustee LaCretzi.
Yes.
Trustee Rowe.
Yes.
Trustee Fisher.
Yes.
There you have it.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay. And Andrew, thanks so much for hopping on from DOLA.
Yeah.
So thanks for
Thank you.
answering questions and
Absolutely, my pleasure. Have a lovely evening.
Yeah, thank you. Paul and Reed, thank you
yeah,
very
thank
much.
you guys
also.
so much for.
Thank you for the support. It means a lot. We'll do it right.
Thank you, Reed.
All right. Good job, team. All right. So we just rolled through all of our business items. So now we're at trustee staff interaction.
We take about a 3-minute break.
Okay, totally. Yeah, let's recess for 5 minutes, then come back. That works. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We're the number one water people. I guess we gotta go back.
Yeah, we're gonna start up again if that's all right. Keep the party train rolling and we get out in time for a drink before the bars.
I like you.
Gotta have fun. What's that? Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they
Remember where you
probably
are?
are.
Remember where you are?
Slammer might be. All right. We'll continue on. The first thing I want to bring up with trustee staff interaction actually was brought to our attention earlier today in public comment, which was the Veterans Memorial. I know you're hanging around and I was like, we'll talk about that first. So I think just to kind of recap, they have the bricks and then also they're wanting to bring the tank in on display. And it sounds as though the total cost was, I think, around $21,000. And their hope is to get each jurisdiction, so it's Salida, Poncha, PD, and then the commissioners to cover 1/4 the cost. And I think it was around $5,143. I think that's what I caught. Anyhow, so we can chat a little bit about that, but the first question, if Philip's still there, be kind of, budget wise, what do we have? If there's our number man there, so advising us on that area. So,
So, yeah, good question. So we, just a little bit of history, we did contribute to the original memorial setup, probably 2017, I think it was, give or take a little bit of time there. And so, yeah, the town has put investment into this in recent years. I think they do a good job of maintaining it down in Poncha. The only question that does come to my mind is, and I don't necessarily put it onto the group that's presenting this request, but typically when we try to cost share across the county, we base it a little bit off of population because all of our budgets are a bit different. I get that 5,000 or 5,100 is not a huge amount, but it's pretty sizable when you compare it to our community grants that are going, that process will be kicking off here soon, but there's a lot of demand for the money that the town puts into that. And we put in about $55,000, and that's split over probably about 20 different organizations and requests. So you can see that, we divvy out a smaller amount of money on average per nonprofit. So that's the only little nuance that I pick up on. It sounds like they've got a little bit of a time constraint, so I get that too. I guess in terms of our current budget, the numbers I ran today on the topics I mentioned earlier, like the additional revenues that we'll look at adding to the budget, we would have room if, and I could include that in the list that I bring back next meeting if the board would like to proceed on this. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, let me know and I'll try to do a better job.
I think that's great. Thank you so much, Philip. Discussion. Quiet.
I would like to see it done. I would like us to donate to it. I think it's important.
I'd like to contribute as well. I do wish we had a little more time and that we could look at a more tiered contribution based on our population and our budget. But it doesn't seem like we really have time to do that if we want to jump on this opportunity.
What was the timing on that again that you need to know by, or?
So everything was put up by the Mr. Berger down in Poncha Springs. And they had to go ahead and pick which tank to go ahead and get.
Okay.
And then based on that, we're trying to go ahead and move it around as quickly as we can to the different municipalities and then the county. And then once we establish that, we still also have our costs that we're going to do to get it here from Alabama, trying to set up funding to go ahead and put it this, make the concrete display for it. We have to have welders come in to do everything, but Mr. Berger has been handling all that aspect of that.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And also, I'd look into the Chaffee Community Foundation for support as well. They would be interested in doing that.
I could reach out to Brian in an email and just ask him his thoughts on the timing and kind of better understand what the time constraint is, and just mention, is there an opportunity to donate these more? Or is this something that lost opportunity? You know what, because I have no idea what the county is thinking about doing, and I think that's a good point. The county covering that whole all-inclusive area, usually it seems like they tend to contribute a little bit more. I was surprised that I hadn't heard from him on this, but that's fine. But I could reach out and maybe just get more information.
Okay. Mark, do you have any thoughts? Don't forget about you.
Yeah, I mean, I support supporting this. I like the idea of a percentage as far as your population. I think that seems to be a bit fair. That's the only thing that I would like to go for, is that percentage of population as far as funding.
Okay. I couldn't tell. I thought I was going to say something else.
No, I'm good. That's it.
Okay.
Just, yeah.
But I agree. I think the consensus is that we definitely would like to help out and do something. So I think you can bank on that. I think just figuring out how much and if we can do percentage based, I think is kind of what our next step will be. But I think you can count on us for something. I think maybe we just table this, spend some time trying to reach out to the foundation and get with Philip just to kind of.
Yeah, Philip, as Philip said, he'll be bringing back some other things that will be affecting the budget. So once I could reach out to Brian and maybe coordinate an email between the county and Salida and him to see what their thoughts are on doing it that way. Then I can get with Philip and we can put that into the
next agenda or next.
Did I understand though that there is a time sensitivity, like that you could lose that tank somehow, or you feel like you have that tank?
We have the tank. So we were able to give our choice for the tank. And that's what they did in Poncha Springs. However, now it's just trying to secure it to be able to have it. So it's not in stone. They've given us, we were able to get our choice, but it's not in stone yet until we can go ahead and say, we got the funding now. So it's kind of like on a whole type basis right now.
And how much time do you think you have? I mean, like if we were to bring.
I would have to talk to Mr. Berger on that, man.
Okay, I was just thinking because we're talking about two bringing
weeks.
it back in 2 weeks.
Okay.
You'd have your answer and.
Because I know that, it would still have to go to the county and the commissioners met this morning.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what the status is for their next meeting, but I do know that they had a meeting this morning because they swore in some commissioners.
Right, okay.
What's that?
I think they meet weekly, but I'm not positive.
I think you're right. I was gonna say, in that sense, it sounds like you guys still have to chat with a few other groups.
And we're trying to get everything situated around so that way when we go, we can say we've attended Buena Vista, Poncha Springs, Salida, And now county, this is our support that we have, and we're looking at you for support also.
Right, I think the action item or moving forward, so we'll take it back, boil the numbers, talk to the county, yep. And then, but I think you can tell the rest of your group that we're on board to do something. We're just gonna figure out how much and work with the other municipalities to hopefully get obviously to that 21,000 that you guys need, but.
I appreciate it.
So
Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for coming out and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
And hanging out the whole time.
Yeah, yeah, that's dedication right there. Great. Okay, well, let's keep going with trustee staff interaction. We'll start on this side, Sean.
First of all, I apologize for calling you mayor.
Oh.
You're just naturally, so I apologize if Libby's on. So sorry, Libby, sorry, the real mayor. And obviously the project manual is a big thing. So I want to make sure that everybody has got good eyes on it. Lisa, obviously with your background and your knowledge, if you have time, I know it's pretty extensive. Jeff, we'll be hanging out for a while, next few days or next couple of weeks. So it'll be good to work with you again. So thanks in advance for your time that you're gonna help me. I don't know, make sure everything's dotted and crossed. So cool thing tomorrow, I'm attending a civil rights CDOT Zoom meeting workshop, and this is part of our contract requirements for the new Arizona Bridge kind of project. So local agencies, contractors, and consultants, project managers. So I think I'll be handling the local agency component of that project. So hopefully we saw a little activity today with Ben going in and correspondence with CETA. So we're still trying to get that project out to bid. So this is one of the things that we're going to have to get on top of. I'll be handling one component, and probably Philip will be handling another component at some point. But we're hoping that the project manager or the project owner's rep will be able to facilitate it and be able to participate appropriately for our positions. So because we have a lot of other things that need our attention. So anyways. So looking forward to that. It should be interesting. I have no idea what I'm getting into, but I'm very excited to expand.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Joseph.
I guess I just want to say a deep sense of gratitude and responsibility that I feel for your support on the grant applications. I know that wasn't done lightly. And it's a novel thing, I think, for the town of Buena Vista to say we want to support this particular development because of the work they're doing. So I just want to say thank you, and I take that responsibility very seriously. And I really look forward with optimism to hopefully getting good news on the grant side. So thank you.
Devin.
I'm good.
I have a few things. One actually relaying from Libby. I don't know if anybody received the Western Places, Western Spaces email. She did it. So I was like, what is she talking about? But she had mentioned that if you had received that, there's a conference and it's at Denver University School of Law, March 10th through the 13th. And that could be, particularly useful in terms of workshops for affordable housing. So if anybody's interested in that, definitely check it out. Another thing I wanted to quick bring up is tomorrow is the Coffee with the Chamber at 8. It's here. I'll try to go to as many as possible. It's a really nice way just to find out what's going on in the community. Try to give a little update. I can't always think of everything, but if anybody else wants to come, it's always nice. I think the community members enjoy seeing us there, and it's a good chance to interact and just kind of brief them on what we're doing. So it's open to anybody. And it's usually about an hour, 8 to 9. And this next thing is kind of not random. Haven't done anything like this yet, but I had printed this out. I kind of thought of it a little late in the day. Well, getting it rolling, but so I try to put a policy together that makes the most sense. If it needs wordsmithing, that's fine. But we've done a lot of conversations about, you know, we have a lot of projects in the mix. There's all kinds of stuff going on, right? Between multiple layers to the onion here with development and water and all the things. And we have a great water dashboard that Joseph, you put together, which is super helpful. It gives us a really clear view as to what's out there, what we have left. And I think that's been super helpful so far in our ability to figure out future decisions or the process of where we want stuff to go. And so with all the developments or the major subdivisions, especially, I mean, like Brandon, I think we have 4 or 5, but it seems like BV is kind of like a hop in place, and who knows, maybe they'll continue to come, maybe it will slow down, maybe we're hitting our stride here, maybe not. But I was thinking it might be nice, and I don't want to create a lot of work for a planner, you, Joseph, but I was thinking maybe we could have a similar type thing. Well, actually less information than what the water dashboard is, but a kind of a dashboard for major subdivisions or major projects that would essentially include just the name, where the location of it is, and the units all in place, just so when we have your report, it's another visual aid to see, hey, this is what's coming. And it'd just be a useful tool for us to keep in mind all the projects that we have versus kind of thinking about or trying to go back to all of our notes, or how many did that project, you know, are they submitting, or how many does this project want? But having that in one place, and granted, I know that will move and change, but it's a nice visual aid, and I think it could be useful for the board, and it's just a helpful tool. And my idea is to keep it fairly simple, because I don't want to create more work for you. I figure you already have all the information, and just kind of having it in the report with the water report as a separate box could be really nice. And so I did type up a suggested policy. I did speak with Jeff Parker beforehand to make sure that it is something legitimate thing I could do, and love to hear your thoughts. And then I would like to try to make a motion on this to potentially do this, as I think it would be a helpful thing for us moving forward. You know, just to have better visual aid and what we have coming down the pipe all in place. So I'll stop talking and just love to hear your thoughts. So yeah.
Yeah, would I be able to actually maybe ask Sue for some thoughts too? Because Sue actually sent a very similar email today.
Right.
So I wanted to hear her thoughts.
Yeah,
Well, and
please.
I do favor something like this that both gives us, and I kind of linked it to the fact that we have lots of developments kind of in progress at some level. And I kind of sometimes see a collision course, I'm gonna take this off for a minute. Kind of a collision course between water availability and development at some point. I know we're trying very hard to manage that, but we have, you know, kind of water allocation and water and ordinance sort of under consideration. And we also are in the middle of our comp plan process. And I feel like we are headed to making some very impactful decisions about some of these developments and water allocation. What, you know, before we've actually heard from the public about their thoughts on growth. And so that concerns, all of those things concern me a little bit. And I thought at a minimum, both that it might help all of us and the public participating in the comp plan to have some sort of tool that would give us this kind of data, but maybe even more extensive. And again, I realize, you know, it's staff work, and I don't know how you track this already, and if some of these pieces might be sort of in place, but that you're reviewing routinely. But for my part, it'd be just nice to have a full scope in front of us, updated kind of continually of, let's see, I think I might have even thought my note here. But just basically all the projects, the timetables as we know them. And again, there's a lot we can't know. I realize that the number of housing units, the types of housing units, the implications for water use and water demand, any timing we can estimate on those kinds of things. And also just what the impact would be on other supports that are needed, from safety to infrastructure to transportation, schools, grocery stores, that kind of thing. And again, that's a lot to ask for. And so in my note, I just asked, how can we refine this to make it workable, manageable, and is it even feasible? So that's my take. And I would love your feedback if you have even had a chance to contemplate it, because I just sent it later this afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, I can provide a few thoughts, and obviously Lisa jump in there, and Sean too, because he has a lot of more understanding than I do about some of the impacts of development. I think including a basic dashboard in the monthly report is easily achievable. I think that the more important question for me is, like, what information do you want to see? Because there's a plethora of information out there. But also, like, for example, you know, these major subdivisions, we've done a couple of sketch plans and I've had a lot of conversations, but they haven't submitted anything. Right. So at what point do you actually want to see data? Because part of my concern, or what could become concerning or alarming, is if we show on a monthly report, planning is saying these major developments are going to do XYZ units and XYZ density, and that, according to the school impact study, is going to produce this many students. We have no idea if that's actually true, when that's going to happen, because they haven't actually applied. And even when they apply, South Main, a perfect example, we have no idea how fast they're going to develop. So what I don't want to do is provide speculation, because I think, and especially some of the factors you were talking about too, like impact on healthcare or the school system or transportation grid, I would be speculating, right? Well, I think more people equals more impact, but I don't know. And I don't know how to try to provide more information on non-reality ideas of developers that is useful to you all in your decision making. And I want to do that, and I don't think it's impossible, but I also don't want to cause alarm because I'm just speculating.
And then also, the only other thing I like the idea of including as much as possible, but then there's also like potential quasi judicial stuff too, because I don't know how much can be shared and how it's shared. And that's and Mark, I know you don't have this policy paper in front of you, so happy to read it out loud so you can hear it, but that's kind of why I was like, starting something simple and then seeing what is possible to add into it in respect to like what is doable for planning department to add to it, or what information they could potentially add to it. So my hope was just to kind of get something simple on there that quantifies the projects that are out there that we have been talking about. Now, my thought was that things that were submitted, and I understand things can always change, but Mark, I'll read you the policy just so you have an idea what we're talking about, because I feel bad you don't have it in front of you. The policy suggestion: the Board of Trustees requests the Planning Department to create and manage a dashboard for major subdivision and major development projects submitted to the town of Buena Vista, Colorado. The dashboard will include the project name, location, and units. The dashboard would be included in the planning director's staff report or provided to the board at least once per month. But I believe I think we get a staff report from you once per month. I think.
Yeah.
So, but the idea was something that was kind of short, sweet, not to put too big workload on you, but something that at the end of the day, at least be there for us to keep tabs on what was rolling in each month. So it's kind of like a beginning stage of what can help us in our tool set to be better at our decision making and concepts and thought process for the future.
And I'm good with that. I think certainly as a start, I think, and I sympathize with how hard it is when things aren't yet concrete. But it does seem like we talk in terms of, if this development goes through, it's going to add this percentage of housing stock to our town. And those are things that I kind of think people should know about the possibility of over some 5, 10, 7-year timetable, because that is a fairly big thing for people to think about as we move forward with the comp plan. So I don't know if there is a way to capture that without having folks think it's going to happen immediately or it's a certainty. So kind of put that out there, but.
So I'm gonna add some thoughts. And I think we're kind of on the cusp of capability to do more of this with ClearGov or even SmartGov.
Yeah, all the govs.
All the government
System, all the gov system. Anyways, we're planning is in the process of implementing that. And it's a tracking system in essence that will provide, you can track all your permits. And so lots of those, and I am not immersed in this, so Joseph will have to help me, but lots of those tracking systems will have report structures that you can spit out reports from. So I think we're getting to that spot where we'll provide permit tracking in our monthly report that just comes right out of that system. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that should be a capability. That's a few months away still, but yeah.
Right. However, what I think I'm hearing from you all, and I understand it because of the water, and that's what's triggering this, is that you would like to see something that's inclusive of all the stuff that that developers have brought forward. And I will say that I have some caution with that as well, because just because a developer comes to you one day and says, what they need to work with us up front lots of times before they even have financing, or they've really built that dream and that vision out. So, in many ways, what Joseph is doing is he's building dreams. And so he's a dream builder. So,
It's all about you.
he has to then kind of decide what he provides you, which he's left at the discretion of, should I put this on this report, as whether or not it's an actual legitimate thing that's going to happen. And I understand why you want that. I think that a person could probably provide what applications we have in the hopper and what the number of SFEs are for those applications at each moment in time, and then maybe provide something that, even if you had some footnotes in it that says, these are just, these are not true applications, but here's some things that are coming down the pipeline in the future. Somehow word that in the report as more visions or things that you've been approached about, so that you kind of have a tally then overall between the two, but that you've distinguished between what is really an application, it's not approved, and you can say approved or not approved, or so I think it's achievable. It's just that right now it's kind of a manual labor thing because SmartGov is not completely up and rolling, but I think that's stuff that can be, this is actually valuable because it can be built into the software. You can go back and work on those things into it. And in my past experience as the director, how I handled that was I had a tracking system that distinguished between what I was coaching up. I called it coaching. And so anything that was visionary that I'd been approached about, I was tallying that, and I was providing that data to council so that they would see how much work we were really doing, because a lot of the stuff that we were talking about took a lot of time. There's a lot of upfront planning, and some of it just doesn't come true, but you're still working on it. And so, you could separate it out. And I think it's possible to do that, but understand, that we're on the cusp of being able to do it more legitimately. So.
I would definitely be in favor of coming up with a snapshot in time that combines current applications with, again, it's going to have to rely on some discretion of like real concepts or coming down the pipe conversations, right? As long as I have that status column where it's very clear that these are at this stage, they have applied, they're going to P and Z, or the public hearing is set, or it's not, or whatever. And these ones are like conceptual or conversational, or they've had a pre-application meeting, but nothing more, right? I would prefer to present all that together so that that nuance is seen versus only presenting these huge things that are largely conceptual right now. If that makes sense.
So adding in, for instance, then the status, so name, location, units and the status, so that we know
Yeah.
that it's, I mean.
What I might suggest is that my monthly report is next meeting. I might suggest that I just come up with a draft and we can discuss it in trustee staff interaction again. And you all can give me feedback on what you'd like to see done differently, as opposed to trying to define it right now.
Sure.
Happy to come up with a, what's this like? Do you guys like this? Is it presenting information that's helpful?
Okay. Joseph, is there also any way to project water demand? Or I guess, again, my concern is that how the projected timetables for water demand on some projects or the possible timetables mesh with our, construction, our improvement project and expansion, the gallery expansion, as well as the ability to bring our existing water rights online that aren't already online.
Yeah, the ability to say this development is going to need this many SFEs is relatively straightforward to get an approximation. But the time is I can't tell you.
Okay.
I can't tell you when these SFEs are going to, one, be dedicated and obligated.
Yeah.
And two, will actually become service connections, and three, will have a water meter and be using our water system. I can't.
I understand that. But just putting the SFEs with each.
Sure, and we're already tracking that, like this, the Viking building is 4 units in a restaurant, and that's like 2 SFEs or whatever it is, right? We're tracking that.
Right, okay.
So it wouldn't be hard to add that as a column.
Okay.
But it's just saying when those SFEs are going to become serviceable taps.
Sure, yeah, that's guesswork. Okay. All right, well, thanks for hearing me out on that. And thank you.
Sure. Well, I'm looking for emotion on my policy people. Come on.
Hey, Gina, can I have some input, please?
Sure.
Yeah, I think we're getting the cart before the horse here. When I'm looking for something coming around, I wait to see some true facts in front of me. To me, seeing, oh, this might happen or that's more frustrating to me than actually waiting and getting facts from Joseph about something that's coming down the road. I think personally, I think this is a waste of time and staff time.
That's fair. I don't think so. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I kind of agree a bit with Mark. I think it's really important when we look at water and where that is. And that dashboard is super helpful, but I don't see having a dashboard of how many projects are coming or going. I feel like it's just like, I don't really see how that is helpful to us as a board, because I would say, oh, that's a lot of that. It's a lot of how things are coming. And I don't really see a lot of information like that being helpful to us, other than what we have with water, which is helpful, but does come with some speculation as well. But the more information that is crammed in front of us that isn't necessarily a fact, I feel like is cluttering us and can confuse us. And I think I agree with Mark there on that.
I will say that I think it's also it's crossed my mind a couple of times during this conversation with the water policy also being something that we're tracking. And we had the discussion about whether or not talked about whether or not we didn't want to include anything that wasn't already an application until that point in time, and then we would add it in. So I think we've kind of covered, that in policy of sorts, that we would be adding, we covered that in what we put in there as far as when we have new water rights, then we revisit it. And those would be added at that time when it becomes a quantifiable source. So I don't know. if we are reporting on things that are speculative, that we don't have an application for, we don't have money for, and yes, they could, then we're communicating to the development community that, and the rest of the community, that these are things that are coming. I think it's dangerous, almost like the perception that might come there too. So on the flip side.
Sean.
Yeah, I was actually kind of probably a question for you, Lisa. I mean, so with, I'm looking at, our water development too, like our expanding portfolios, our recent water purchases, our opportunities possibly with Upper Ark and purchasing water, getting that into our portfolio, looking at, our project water, and kind of interesting to see what it might look like in 2023 with the impact that all the things that are happening out west, so that's impacting that. And have you had experience with that kind of situation, or would it be good to maybe kind of have, if we were going to move forward, let's kind of have this subset of where we're at with, with our water too, with our, the Bray, Tri-Field, obviously Tri-Field's not really doing too much, but we have some moving parts there. I don't know that it's like, Sue's email today, doesn't quite answer that, but I mean, at least it gives you some more information on, what could be happening, not necessarily immediately, but what direction. I don't know. I guess, Lisa, have you had challenges in your experience with kind of the situation that we're in right now with water and availability and water purchases and developers bringing water?
Past experiences, it was more stormwater. It wasn't water rights. I think this is a unique situation. That's what I recognize what you're looking for and what you're.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about water. I'm just talking about dashboard.
Yeah.
Projects that we've already been brought to the table and had people sit here tonight that we just gave an LOI to. But if nothing is promised, why did we do that?
Yeah.
So why can't I have a dashboard that says he has how many units, this is the location? But I mean, you guys are saying that it's a waste of time because nothing's, permanent. Well, yeah, nothing's permanent till what extent? So having.
I want to speak. If in the Mountain Mail, they have talked about the crossings, the subdivision below me, and somewhere else where Buena Vista is going to have all of this affordable housing stuff. If they're putting it in the Mountain Mail, we ought to have the information. I shouldn't have to read the Mountain Mail to get it. And I would assume that if we are writing letters of and trying to get grants for somebody, that there is something more permanent in place. I mean, why did we do that if there's nothing permanent there?
So I mean, maybe a couple of thoughts. One, my monthly report is not perfect. And I've been wanting to try to find a better format for a while to present some of the numerical information on that report. So at the very basic level, I will absolutely in my next report work to create a table that meets this, and I will base it on current actual applications. And in that, I will include pre-application meetings, because those have actually been documented, and sketch plan meetings, which we would cover our major subdivisions. So that's something I can absolutely do. And I think we'll hopefully, with better formatting than what it has been, will give you a better snapshot of where we are. I think the water policy that will hopefully coming back before you for discussion in February, if we pursue that bucket idea of saying XSFE in this bucket and XSFE in that bucket, that provides a framework right there to start thinking about where is our water, where do we want our water to go, and what's actually coming down the pike, and where is that going potentially? And then trying to think about what is our current portfolio and the ways that we're looking at expanding that or diversifying that. How do we represent that as a dashboard for you all? Because you need that pulse on what's happening in your decision making. I just am not sure that that all that can be put before you soon, before we have that water policy in place, right? But this this stuff, I can throw that together, and I don't think it would be speculative. To Mark's point, I can say this is what the application actually said. I can say it's a sketch, so we all know it's a sketch.
Yeah, I think it has to include
Yeah.
a status.
Yeah, that's agreed.
That, says pre-qualified.
Which is fine, and I think the idea is like, just because it's there doesn't mean it's gonna happen, but it's just the overall, it's like looking at the worldview of like all the things. So yeah, maybe half of it won't happen, but it's nice to know these are things that are potentially floating. And I think it just gives us a better vision of what could turn out. Maybe it doesn't, but to not know and to have that stuff float around and then potentially make decisions on stuff when other things do pop up later, then you start to think, man, I wish I knew about this earlier, even if maybe it doesn't result. But it's important to, I think, have the information. I believe information is power. So the more education we have, I think is important, to Devin's comment. But I appreciate that, Mark, if you could, or Mark, sorry, Joseph, if you don't mind doing something. The reason why I'm asking for a policy is because I would like it to be something that does happen all the time. I don't want it like here and there or something like that. It's important to me that it becomes kind of a concrete piece of how we do our thing and what our tool set is. And that's why I created this.
And for my part, sorry.
As a trustee, we're encouraged not to attend the planning and zoning because it could affect on what we could vote on. So it is kind of nice to know a little bit in advance what they're doing over there and what we can expect coming forward.
Thank you, Cindy. Just one, I'm sorry, one more thing, I'll stand down, but for my part, I do appreciate what you're offering to do, Joseph, and I don't mean to suggest for a moment that we don't get really great updates and rich discussions of these projects. I think what will help with what you're suggesting is it kind of aggregates the totality, or it aggregates the information so that we have a pretty good picture of really what's on tap and the status. So thank you.
Yeah, and just, I mean, Gina, not to discount the word policy, but like the water dashboard, you didn't ask for that because of a policy, and we've been really consistent with that. So for what it's worth, if we don't have policy, like I can still reformat my monthly report and continue to upgrade that based on your feedback, which is what it should be. It should evolve with your feedback.
Yeah, and I think this is good for Spark Up too, as you're building that up too. So this is a valid discussion, even so. So.
We've been trying to.
I don't know if it's gonna add anything anymore at this point, but I guess I'd say like whatever I'm reading, like packets, I have my BV open. And I just go to like the project plan and then I have to go to the right hand side and read through everything, see which ones this, I'm like, wait, which one's, there's another one that's kind of this, that. And so basically just turning the X and Y axis over instead of just going to the project to figure out what's on the right hand side, like the right hand side's up and then the other projects, kind of like what you're saying. So I don't think it's really adding much because it's kind of what you're talking about, more of a timeline. So then you see where everything's at and what's going on. Because again, let's like, I then go every single one on my BV and then try to keep track of it. And so I think that's part of this is trying to, it's like, I just have like a gut feeling of, okay, come spring, we're going to have a whole lot of decisions to make possibly.
And I do want to caution, I can tell you where the status is at today. I cannot try to tell you when you will see something or when it will be at a next status.
Right.
Because I mean, we've had a particular final plat on our plate for a year now, right? And that should be a 3-month process, but it's a complicated development. So trying to tell you, provide a Gantt chart of like, oh, this is here now, so it should be here and then, right? I'm not going to go that far because I don't think it's going to give you real information. Right. So timing probably won't go there. Status for sure.
The only other thing I was gonna add was I think one of the things you mentioned earlier, too, is the timelines for allocation of certain thing is a lot of the developments do have different phases though, right? So it's not just the full development of the phase. But again, I'm sure that can change, just like this, phase 1 for the crossing is completely different now if they got this funding than what we saw at that sketch plan. So that drastically changes. I was just thinking, if you're looking for ways to break it down.
Yeah, the phases would be the thing.
All right. Well, I guess we won't worry about being a policy then. It sounds like you'll just be able to put that in your report, which that will suffice for me as long as it's always there. So that's the thing. I just want the consistency of it.
Sure.
And no, move along here, but like Sue said, this isn't at all suggesting that your reports aren't, they're excellent.
no, I'm not.
So this was just an addition to make life easier on just having all of it in front of us in terms of major subdivision. But your reports are great. So it wasn't to suggest anything of that nature. Okay. The trustee staff, go for it if you haven't said it
I
yet.
think I'll have nothing. Talked enough tonight.
Peter?
I'm sorry to follow all this then with this, but the last meeting we had a memo on water and we didn't want to discuss it because Joseph, you weren't here, but you are here now.
Oh, sure.
At least physically. I know you got in last night, but.
I got in 2 nights ago.
Oh, okay, then you should be fine.
So some sleep.
We had, I think a fairly decent conversation around that memo when you weren't here. And I think, and I then met with Lisa last week for our one-on-one, when we were talking, one of the things that Lisa mentioned is that she thinks that there's some conflicting information coming to staff from the board about the water policy and timelines and kind of goals to a certain extent. I don't know if that's accurate, but in particular for me is touching on the water allocation, kind of separating out different parts of the holistic water policy, but getting that allocation part even moving faster than maybe some of the more contentious issues that were raised in your memo. But more importantly, since you weren't here last meeting and the memo was there, I didn't know if we should kind of cover some of that and try to add clarity where there could be confusion.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I guess I don't necessarily feel confusion. I feel like I've heard various data points, but I think they're all relatively pointing in the same direction in the sense that public comment on the whole thing, the ordinance and the policy has been extended to the end of January. So my intention is to work on a summative report of that public comment time, all the feedback we've gotten, and then really probably continue the recommendations that you saw in my memo last meeting, which is tabling consideration of the ordinance. I'll provide a draft policy for you all to wrestle with, allocation policy, and then to consider what it might look like to have a more dedicated working group on this topic that might involve some of the stakeholders that have been really involved. So I don't necessarily feel confused, but if what I just said is not what you
I
want.
don't know
then I
that the
should
word was
definitely-
conflicting. I think that with, it's okay. I think with planning commission, where this really went was we came here with work session and we talked about, because we started here really, which is actually what we normally do things.
Sure.
But we did that intentionally so that we could get your feedback so that we could tailor something and then take it through planning commission. But in planning commission, they had asked Joseph to, get some benchmark data and get some data points, and the developers we thought we're far enough along in the process, and then it went as a public hearing item. But then we had the meeting with the developers, and instead of 4 showing up like we had RSVP, we had 20. And so then they added to the pile of what we wanted to tailor that to. So I think it's just kind of part of the whole process and the metamorphosing of it. And some of the things that are that are conflicting are more between the developers and what we're hearing here. And so that's sort of the conflict. And it's weeding through those things and looking at data points and taking from other communities that have water policy, which will be interesting because not many do. But, and then going back to planning commission with something that is tangible. And you're on the path to do that without the ordinance. We had talked about that, which was in your memo. And then doing that, just focusing on the policy instead.
And I just want to say,
some people, the conflict also was that some people on the trustee, I think, felt that we needed more time. We were communicated we needed more time to tailor it. And then others, I think, felt like we need to move it. And that seems to be one thing that was kind of like variable. And so we were trying to figure out, where do we go? And so maybe direction on that from the
Yeah,
board.
that's what I'm
That point right there is, you know, some of you were saying, let's just get it over with, and let's get something in front of us. And then others were saying, you know, let's give it time to really look at it. But
And I'll just add from a legal process side, and Jeff can cut me off the moment I stray from reality, but the progression was that we had noticed a public hearing on that draft ordinance with planning and zoning on December 7th. Right, we had that, we opened that hearing, and that discussion, much like discussions you've had and feedback we've had from public, was very robust and not ready to produce a recommendation from planning and zoning to you all. So planning and zoning table or continued that hearing to January 18th. So there is a continued date certain January 18th public hearing on the topic. My intent, which is next week, right? My intention is to continue the conversation and recommend that we don't, if they're not ready to make a recommendation to you all, that they just table the topic, right? But I don't want you to get confused if you see that on the agenda for planning and zoning. It will be on there because it was a continued public hearing by them. But that's not to say that they're ready to make a decision, right? Quite the opposite.
I guess on that then, for clarity for Tyler, because I'm in the bucket of, I think we need something on the books for water, the water allocation section of it sooner rather than later, because I think, you know, we have 280 kind of, I mean, that 280 is already kind of a window down of our taps for infill, some other things that we have planned for, but you know, the boulders come through, then it's really 240. And then it keeps moving. And again, you don't know a timeline on when we're gonna have to decide on a final plat or anything. And so I'd like the sooner we can kind of have that in place so that everybody knows these are the rules, like this is what we have until we get more water. This is what it is. This is how we decide to allocate it. And so then if anything comes to us, we say this has already been in place and we can make a decision based off of rules that are already kind of been established, if that makes sense. So like, you know, if someone comes and proposes the phase one of the development and it's all in a bucket that we have almost none of now, then we're like, we can't go forward with this because it's not in line with our policy that we have set in place. I mean, that's my personal view on that. And so if it sounds like a public hearing on the 18th and then they may not decide to give a recommendation, and so then it moves. And so what?
To be clear, planning and zoning has no authority over your policy making, right? So their like legal focus is on the ordinance. Now we're discussing both because they're interconnected and the topic is interconnected, but they may decide and be ready to issue a recommendation to you to table consideration of the ordinance and to move forward with the policy. But in reality, your authority is not bound on the policy side by that recommendation from them, right? You're not waiting for them on that policy side. You're waiting for them on the ordinance side because that's what our code requires. Right. So I just want to be clear that planning and zoning, yeah, they're talking about the policy, but I've been clear with them. Their recommendation is solely on the ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the water allocation from my memory was that it was pretty much our decision. And I also want to make sure we're not making it arbitrarily, right? So I want to make sure we have as much information, but I also don't want us to kind of kick the can and then all of a sudden we have these developments and we're like, well, we don't even know what to do here. And because like if it comes to me and we don't really have water policy in place for a development that could even take all of the water and we still have first come, first serve basis, I'd probably vote to abstain or something. So it's like, I think we need to have that in place and have a good runway for developers to know what they're kind of playing with. But
I agree.
anyways, like I said, I know I kind of dominated that one, but
No, I agree. I think I was the one who kind of asked if we could delay it a little longer for more public input. So but I do concur with what you're saying. It'd be good to move on the allocation piece or just get that clear. But we can't really do that, or can we?
We can.
I mean, but
technically.
I'll say that like, because you all gave direction to extend the public comment through the end of the month, that has been communicated publicly.
Right.
So I'd hate to like all of a sudden say, oh, never mind.
Yeah, that's
right?
kind
So
of
I do think we need to honor that.
Yeah.
And realistically with staff time, I don't think we can pull together a quality report and a draft allocation policy for you to consider before the first meeting in February at the earliest. I don't think it's possible. So on my horizon, I was planning on one of the meetings in February anyways, and I can definitely do the best I can to make that first meeting, if that's, preferable or your direction or possible.
For the policy.
For the policy, yeah.
Peter, that suffice for you?
Yeah, I guess I just kind of want to, again, first of all, have this conversation with you here, and yeah, like the more that we can kind of just get that moving, I just wanted to make sure that didn't get, well, we want to get more stakeholders, and then we're going to get this, and then it comes March, and then it's April, and then we don't have a policy. And it doesn't sound like that was going to be the case anyways, but it doesn't have to be the first meeting in February. It'd be better for us to have, more thought into it, have as much data and information as we can. So if it's the second meeting in February, but in February would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have time to do it right. We don't want it to be rushed.
Right. I don't want it to be rushed, but I would like it in place.
But we don't want it to be
Hasty, but not too hasty.
How many people have completed the survey? Do you know?
I think we're around 45.
45?
Yeah. No, and I think I was.
The newspaper should.
I was
tell people
against
more about
you,
it.
Sue. I was one of the people that wanted it to take longer, and because I think that's important, but I think if there was other ways we get more people involved sooner, that'd be great. But at the same time, I agree with Peter that we need to have that in place because it kind of really inhibits our ability to do a lot more.
We're moving into the spring months where people are gonna be really pushing from development anyways, so, and I think that Joseph knows that. Springtime is the uptick.
Yeah.
And it helps us, I think, also make decisions on different developments in terms of the, I don't know if the recipe or the ingredients of the development where, like if, for example, Crossing is able to get this dual grant stuff, it's like their phase one would be more in the affordable housing bucket.
Right.
And then the next one, the phase one might be more in the general development, but it's, and so we can actually figure out how they play together with that, so.
Yeah.
But Cindy, did you?
Do I have anything for tonight? No.
Okay, sorry.
I didn't interrupt you, yeah.
I'm good.
But I do have something that I want to bring up. I have brought it up before, and with a few things, developments that have happened on Main Street, we need to decide whether we want to preserve our historical Main Street. If we do, we need to put some of the guidelines as mandatory, and the longer we put that off, the more of the historical Main Street that is drastically changed. So I know that everybody's plates are full, but I would like that to be something that we consider in the near future.
And just to give you a quick update on that, I did draft amendments to our chapter 19, which would achieve what you're saying.
Okay.
Those went through legal review. They went back to HPC, and there's some just more discussion to reconcile some legal advice that with HPC desires. So my hope is that in the February meeting, we're able to reconcile some of those with HPC. And then we'd be able to kind of clean up that code language and bring that forward in the coming. Maybe February is realistic, maybe early March is realistic, but it's definitely still in the works.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lisa? I think we may have lost Mark. I don't know what time it is over there.
Yeah, his power went out.
Oh.
It's 2 a.m. there.
Is it really? Oh, God.
Oh, at least the tours possibly.
So one of the things that I've been toying with, and I want to talk to staff a little bit too, is the facilities that we have as we move into the new budget year, and maybe a month or so out here, but I would like to talk with staff about maybe having a public noticing and having trustees visit some of the different facilities and have maybe the department heads talk to you about some of the different capital projects and just to think, sometimes it's really good to put your eyeball on the infrastructure at the same time that you're talking about the proposed, capital projects. And so we had talked about that in our one-on-one meeting. You specifically had mentioned something about the water plant. And I know some of you have seen some of these facilities, but to have that with some of the projects, the capital projects that we're proposing, and it may be good to time that when we have the police station open up. And so we can get all in at once into the new police station, and then maybe even, I want us to go to all of them, even if you visited town hall over and over, maybe there's things that we want to talk to you about that we're thinking about at town hall. So would that be something that you guys would find valuable as a group, to do it as a group and public notice it? And kind of
We've done that in the past, I believe, and I think it was pretty helpful and beneficial.
Yeah, I think we were gonna try to fit some of that in, at least the water plant for the summer, but so much was happening, we weren't able to do it. So I'd love that.
Yeah, and like I said, we might tend that like early spring. I'd almost like to do it when the new PB.
Mid to late March would probably be ideal.
Yeah, but, and if you wanted to see something before that, we can coordinate as well, but as far as the coaching, the department head talking about the capital projects and giving you a kind of a rundown with a tour. I'd like it to be done. So, and I'll talk to them too, so.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you for reminding me. I appreciate that. It's kind of late. Losing my thoughts as the.
Philip.
Nothing else for me. Thank you.
And Jeff, you stayed on, so how about you?
No, I'm good. I appreciate the conversation. I'm listening intently, so I've got some work to do, I'm sure, soon.
To make sure that we're all.
And then Paula.
legal.
I do have something.
Oh.
May we all look over to our right?
Oh.
We now have doors.
Oh.
Yay, yay. This will be such a wonderful benefit. Meetings of people are going up and down. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Excellent, excellent.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
So, excellent work.
What about you? Do you have anything for us? You get to listen to everything all day.
Nope, but
Everyone left.
pretty close to being the school board.
There you go. All right.
Are we more
All right.
accepting?
What? I think we've got only one more thing left on the agenda, and it is to adjourn. Is there a motion?
Yeah, make that motion.
Second.
Roll call, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Good job, guys. Sorry.
Oh, wait, does Libby have anything?
Yeah, I wanted to just say thanks to those who thought I should not run the meeting tonight with COVID.
Thank you. Take care, Libby.
Feel better, Libby.
Yeah.
Are you up?
Yeah, you should be sleeping now.
Yeah.
I will be. I have been. No, kidding.
Good. You got humor still. I like it.
Good night.
Bye, Libby.
Welcome to the club.
Thanks for going kind of late.